Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Market Open. We are live. Thank you, everybody, for being here. It is Thursday, May 7th. Amidst the kind of guy who would be late to his own funeral. You know, that's a good one. That's actually more original than I've seen for a while. I don't know what to tell you guys. Something before you go live happens every time, and it results in being a little late. It's just like you would think after 3 years I'd be better at mitigating that from happening, but it happens every time. Anyway, we're live. We're here. We have a lot to talk about, a lot to get into. A bunch of earnings from last night that were relatively important for the AI space. Bunch of earnings from this morning that were super important. New York Knicks up 2-0. Are we winning this chip? We haven't won a chip since 1972. Are the New York Knicks winning this chip? Knicks in 4. Get to the final. I mean, I don't know, man. I'm feeling like maybe there's a chance. Maybe there's a chance. S&P is up in the pre-market. It's actually a relatively red pre-market across all the different stocks that have been pumping like crazy in terms of semiconductor names. Now, if you want to call a 2 to 3% drop in the pre-market on the ARMs and the Microns and the SanDisk a dip, I wouldn't say it's necessarily a dip, but nonetheless, some of these names are red and they're taking a little bit of a breather. NVIDIA actually broke out yesterday at 207, which was nice to see. NVIDIA right there, 207.83. AMD down about 1.7%. Again, really not that big of a deal that AMD is taking a breather right here. IGV getting lifted by Datadog in the pre-market as that one had a relatively strong earnings. That stock up 30%. So I guess the market really did not price in what they thought they would get from a Datadog. AppLovin also had a really good earnings. That stock is down 1%. So market's being very selective in terms of how they think of the software names that are putting up different types of growth curves. Obviously, we saw Reddit, which is classified as software. Good earnings, 175 or 177, all the way back down to 167. So we'll talk about some of the different earnings and how the market's interpreting it. ASTS up 4.84% after announcement about Bluebird last night. Rocket Lab coming back to life a little bit. You got Snowflake as well. That's up about 10%. Snowflake didn't have earnings though, right? So yeah, that's definitely a byproduct of Datadog likely having a pretty good earnings. So we'll get into those numbers in a second and we'll take a look at that. But you're having a relatively normal pre-market across a variety of sectors outside of some of the semiconductor names that are taking a very small hit. ARM taking the biggest hit, down about 7.7. They did not have the best call. Their numbers were mediocre at best, to be honest. I mean, the numbers were not really substantial. On the call, the CEO, Rene, he really needed to prove the CPU thing is real. And he kind of did, but he also kind of didn't. He definitely didn't hype it up the way Intel and AMD did. And as a result, I think that's why that stock's down 7%. Now, is ARM expensive? Yeah, you could argue that ARM's expensive and it probably was priced for perfection, but it did pump to 268 at one point before the call, and the call happened and it came back down. So we'll talk about that, see what's going on right there, and then we'll keep going to try to see all these different software names that are potentially catching a little bit of a bid. Google surpassed 400 in the pre-markets. This one was inevitable, right? We had that Anthropic deal, which was a very, very big contract for Google in terms of increasing their backlog, and the street seemed to like that. So you got Google getting some love. And then your other Mag 7s, like a Tesla, getting a little bit of a breakout, 4 or 5. We had some big news around SpaceX and Anthropic yesterday. Didn't get too much time to talk about it because we had earnings last night, so we'll dive deeper into that today. But it is pretty incredible how Elon is kind of playing 4D chess to navigate the AI ecosystem, and quite frankly, to give a better reason to buy SpaceX on the IPO. So we'll talk about that, and then we will keep going from there. Oracle, yeah, almost. Did it hit 200? It was at 199, 199.07. Okay, so it touched 200 for a little bit. Let's see if we break through today. This one was a good one, you know, around that 130, 150 range, really gave a decent opportunity like a lot of these different semiconductors names did. This one got worse because of the software sell-off on April 13th. Oracle has a legacy software business called NetSuite, so the street thought it was a dead software stock, and you're seeing a pretty decent rebound just a couple weeks later. All right, let's get into it. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Omer, C-Man, Daniel, what's up, what's up? Ben Lee, good morning. Thank you all for being here. We'll talk about Fastly as well. We talked about it with Jason yesterday. Ultimately, guidance just wasn't good enough, and that's why that one ended up taking a hit, going the opposite of DigitalOcean, even though it's kind of in the same space. Eva, Cycle Time, what's up? Kane Thomas, Alex, good morning. Usha, Channing, Mark, Chef Mike. Chef Mike, what's for breakfast, man? That's the question. I don't eat breakfast, but What is for breakfast? Ray, Charles, Chels, Chicago meetup, excited. Chicago meetup, I'm excited as well. I'm actually flying out to the Windy City tonight. So if you finally want to get your last minute tickets, you can click right there. And we have, I think, about like 15 more spots open, and then it'll be officially closed here. But yeah, if anyone wants to come, it'll be fun. It'll be exciting. And Saturday, we'll be able to see people in Chicago. Again, I went there once in 2015, and I really, I don't know much about the city. I've heard so much about it, so I'm excited to kind of explore around and see what it's like. Chad, good morning. He says, where's your shitty instant coffee? Chad, we don't do the instant coffee anymore. We grew out of it. Now, literally now I just drink water all day. To be honest, literally, that's the only accelerant I have throughout the day. Jason will be there as well. That's going to be really exciting. Get to see him again. I get to see him again for the second time in like 2 months. So I'm excited to see him again as well. Martin, what's up? Charles, V Brock, A5, JSO, John P, Centrist. All right, let's get into it. Thank you, everybody, for being here. And let's get started. So first off, we got some Iran news that is actually pretty bullish as well. So the big update yesterday was that Iran and the United States are now negotiating on this memorandum that would allow the ability for uranium enrichment to end. We got another update this morning. Iran is showing surprising openness to Washington's main demand, the removal of its stockpile of uranium enriched to 60% to a third country. At this stage, no agreements have yet been reached regarding the identity of the country that will absorb the database, but talks are ongoing. Now, once again, we don't know necessarily if this is going to be happening or not, but given the progress of the talks that have been happening over the past couple of days, and oil fell a nice 7% yesterday. Oil is at, wow, it's actually at 90 this morning. Look at that. It was at 97 last night. Okay, so that headline that I just read, that's probably the reason behind it. If Iran is really getting rid of some of their enriched uranium, I would imagine the street's going to think, okay, that's an end to the conflict, or at least that's a pretty good way to think that this is a conflict that is going to end, which is right in time for July 4th, America 250. It's right in time for Trump campaigning for the midterms. I mean, if you can get that oil price to start coming down and the market start reflecting it, I think people are just going to have a much more positive view, especially given, people's memories are short, in the context of the president or the Republican Party as they go to the midterm elections. This was also something that kind of indicated to me that Trump is pretty happy about what's happening. Stock market hit an all-time high today. He tweeted yesterday, jobs and 401ks are booming. So pretty obvious that Trump does not want to go back into a war. Trump does not want to fight. Trump does not want to start bombing civilian infrastructure, even though he keeps saying if Iran doesn't sign a deal, he'll do it. Because if he does, he knows the stock market's probably going to go down, oil's going to go up. And that's not the right thing to do. And quite frankly, again, April 2nd, I think he announced a ceasefire. And I think at that moment, it was obvious that he does not want to go into a war. He's looking for an off-ramp. You had so many different people that are not literally part of the administration, but that are close to the administration saying, this guy does not want to get into World War III. And even though he kept threatening, remember that day he said there will be death upon an entire civilization or something, you kind of just had to look past it and be like, okay, no, he's not he's not actually going that far. But obviously the sensational nature of his rhetoric and how the media portrays it, got a lot of people to believe that he could go that far. And just like the tariffs, he tends to hype things up only to try to get a deal. And so if we're going to get a deal, even if it's 10 to 12 years on uranium enrichment, not 20 or not 5, meet somewhere in the middle, unfree some of the assets, let go of some of the sanctions. Maybe that's going to be what the market needs. And quite frankly, if the market is this bullish and we don't even really have the deal, I wonder what the hell happens when we seriously do get a deal and where the market goes from there. And I think the market globally is starting to interpret that. Look at Japan yesterday, guys. The Nikkei up 5.6%. It's not easy for an entire index for a country to go up 5.6%. I mean, I don't know when the last time the S&P actually went up 5.6%. We've had a couple of 2.3% days, but 5.5%. Now I know the Nikkei is smaller than the S&P, but man, that is a lot of excitement and momentum. Kospi was also up another 4.3%. That's in South Korea. So you're starting to get a lot of different global players. The global markets have vastly outperformed the S&P 500 this year, but you're starting to see them continue to outperform the S&P as they start to price in some of this good news. Now, a lot of people are also saying, well, when he does announce the deal, it could be a sell the news, and it could be one of those things where the market is topped and we're kind of, already in a certain level of euphoria and excitement. And I have a couple stats on this that I think will be interesting to share with everybody, but I'm not saying that's not a possibility. The question is just how likely do people feel that is a possibility, that once we get the biggest piece of news we need, which is that the war is officially over and we have reached a deal, that the market sells it off because of it's all priced in. And honestly, I don't know. I think there's other reasons the market could fall, but I feel like that would be a reason for people to be a bit more excited. Tom Lee continues to believe, even though we hit his target of 7,300 and that stocks offer a good risk to reward, 20% drawdown feels likely from here.
I am, Scott. I think that 7,300 originally was like an aspirational level. And now that we're here, I think that there still is fuel for a move higher from here. But we do have to confront later this year two things, and maybe it won't affect the markets, but I think it's the trigger for a drawdown. One is, of course, the market will test a new Fed, and this incoming Fed chair has some different theories on the sources of inflation and how to read inflation. And so the market, I believe, will put those views to the test. And of course, the second is that every day that the Strait is closed, we know that there's an acute shortage developing of petroleum products. So if price reacts later this year, that's going to test the market. So I do think there's the ingredients for turbulence later, but AI and the scarcity, and the U.S. is the provider of that scarcity, is why I think we can exit 77 or higher, and maybe 2027 is one of the biggest rallies we see in our lifetime. So I think it's still a bullish outlook, but turbulence in the middle.
So again, how much do you believe that turbulence in the middle is actually going to happen? If it does happen, I don't think anyone's going to be super surprised, especially if it's like 5 to 8% from here. If it's 20%, 15% from here, I think a lot more people are going to be a bit curious on how the hell that's happening, or what's the catalyst to make that happen. And time will tell to see over the coming weeks and months, I guess, if Tom Lee is right about this. Now, the other reason, before we get into some of the earnings, why I think some people are saying this can't happen is because take a look at a few of these charts right now. Let's get into some of this macro stuff. So this chart I thought was really important by Goldman Sachs. So from April 2024 to April 2026, you're looking at the tokens processed per month. And this is your global token capacity so far. I think it's like 10 quadrillion. Then, as we get into the second half of 2026, you're seeing token economics turn positive based on the unit economics and the cost for inference going down. And by 2030, Goldman is assuming that token consumption will be up more than 12x based on non-agent workloads and consumer agents. This is also your thesis for CPUs, by the way, because the more inference and agentic workloads you have, the more CPUs are going to be required. This is why Intel and AMD have been re-rated. So, and imagine this is bearish. Imagine it's not token consumption up by 12x by 2030. Imagine it's something like 20x. That is why I think we're seeing the type of the bull market that we're seeing right now, because once again, people are just assuming, well, the thing that's going to change right there is earnings growth, and that will lead stock prices to continue to get re-rated. And it's interesting to kind of take a look at this. Important stat from yesterday that I thought was incredibly interesting to see. In the .com bubble, or at least going into 1999, the average top 10 NASDAQ 100 stock was up 596%. Going into the March 2000 top, we were up 650% on the average NASDAQ 100 stock. Currently, right now, the average NASDAQ 100 stock, the top 10, going into or going over a one-year basis, is up 765%. So the average 10 stocks over the past year in the NASDAQ right now are surpassing the one-year gains leading up into the dot-com bubble in 1999 and 2000. So you've seen this massive increase in terms of the amount of companies that have obviously started to do well. But then you look at this chart right here, the red on the screen is the forward earnings, and the blue is the capitalization share of the S&P 500 versus the semiconductors. And it's going up and up and up. And I think we talked about this yesterday. The reason why the market has continued to surge, at least for semiconductors as a part of the S&P, which is now 17% concentrated, is because of that earnings growth. And I think you have to draw a line in the sand right here. Either you believe this token consumption reality is real, and we're going to need way more memory, way more packaging, way more co-packaged optics. We're going to need way more of all these different things that are part of the supply chains that make AI real, which is why we've seen so many stocks go up this year, because they are critical elements of that supply chain, or you believe it's not going to happen. And I, just based on everything I'm seeing every day and covering every day, based on what I use every day, someone asked what are consumer agents? These are things on your phone or your desktop that are going to be doing things for you autonomously, right? And that's going to lead to a lot more tokens. Based on all those experiences that I've had over the past couple of years, I feel like I got to default to the more bullish side, which is that this is going to be much bigger than we think. And maybe that means the stock prices are still a bit elevated compared to the short-term nature of the rise of the stock price on a variety of these different names that have gone vertical. But does it mean the thesis is wrong over the next 5 years? Maybe not, if we're going to grow as much as we're going to grow. Which means, once again, bullish everything, right? Like, now, maybe certain sectors right now are not benefiting, like a fintech or a software. But if this AI revolution is as real as it is, all these software companies will become more efficient, or they're going to go dead, right? It's like one or the other. So you got to kind of pick the right horse there. All these fintech companies should become more powerful, stronger, stable coins, agentic commerce. All this stuff should help them at the end of the day, even if the market right now is not interpreting it, which is why it's very exciting to cover the markets right now and be an investor, because it feels like this is quite frankly going to be one of the best 5-year stretches, if not 10-year stretches in history. Now, we've talked extensively about the bear case. I did a Substack over the weekend highlighting all the bear cases for a Sunday Night Future show. We spent an hour talking about all the different ways that this doesn't play out. But if we want to be more optimistic and say it is going to play out in that way, then that's what we got to see in the context of the earnings. And that is why stocks are going green in the pre-market on some good earnings. Datadog, that's up 30%. They absolutely crushed earnings. Now, once again, the market's being a bit selective here in terms of what companies they give the premium to, because some of these names crush earnings and they don't get anything. Some of these names crush earnings and they go down. But you got Datadog right here. Revenue, $1 billion. That's up 32% year over year. Not growing as fast as every other software company, but it's fast enough where the stock was down, I think, 5% going into the year, where they changed the narrative. EPS, that's up 30% year over year. Customers with 100,000 ARR, that is up 21% year over year, and their gross margin, slight miss, 80% versus 80.7, but that was still green. CEO said Datadog executed to a strong quarter with 32% year over year growth, 335 million in operating cash flow. We are helping customers of all sizes and industries deploy modern cloud-based AI-enabled solutions. I think that was the sentence right there, along with the beat and raise, that got the street to be excited. This idea of more cloud-based AI-enabled solutions across the scale. I mean, obviously the cloud computing companies have gotten so much momentum. That is why you're seeing this type of green. And I also think that's why the market is more excited for some of these software names. AppLovin also had a pretty good earnings. Street didn't care. I think this is more of like an advertising thing that the street is not happy about, even though they gave Reddit some of that love. And I don't know what AppLovin has to do. Goldman Sachs raised their price target to $585. You had Jefferies raise their price target. So a bunch of different firms came out this morning and said, hey, we think this was an amazing quarter. But overall, the street did not fully like it. $1.28 billion of free cash flow for Q1, 55% year-over-year growth. EPS, they beat by 3%. Revenue, they beat by 3%. Revenue is up 60% year-over-year. EPS is up 113% year-over-year. I did not listen to the call, but Tanner right there says that the app call was amazing. I would default to that. They also did a video call. So you got more of these companies. Yeah, you have Trade Desk tonight, which is going to be important. I mean, you also have them kind of embracing shareholders by like getting on video and actually talking to them, right? So we're seeing more companies do that, but still the street didn't care. So I don't know, maybe you compare multiples when it comes to AppLovin and Datadog and say this was a multiple based rally for why Datadog is up versus AppLovin is down. But you know, Datadog's PE is 500. AppLovin's PE is 30. So it's one of those things where it's like, is it really valuation? And if it is valuation, does the market even care about valuation right now? Because there's a lot of stocks that are going crazy on earnings where the market has completely dismissed valuation. I mean, AMD has fundamentally increased its valuation against NVIDIA right here, 130 on the trailing 12 months PE. But the market doesn't care because the market cares about growth. AppLovin gave you way more growth than a Datadog, but the market cares more about a Datadog in terms of its stock price than AppLovin. So I think we're in a little bit of a weird spot in terms of how the market is calling its winners and losers. But you know, the ones that are winning, even if they are not in the right sector, is good for the overall sector because Datadog up 32%. That's helping IGV get a nice 2.7% gain in the pre-market. Snowflake, I think, is just benefiting from a Datadog as that's up 10%. They're kind of in the same space, even though they're slightly different. I don't see a headline on Snowflake, but does anyone have a headline on Snowflake? I do not. Nope, no headline on Snowflake. Yeah, I would imagine that's getting a bid from Mr. Datadog. Shopify, that's up a little bit, 2%. Spies up a little bit, 733. Google again crossing 400, and then Rocket Lab 86 as that is green. HimX, this is another name in the photonics space that is going up 30% right here. It's a small cap, 2.15 billion. We've seen this story a couple of times this year. These small cap photonics names. Poet was the one recently that had a massive run, and then it kind of came down. But HimX, this one, I believe they either had earnings this morning or you had a headline getting re-rated right here, as that's also getting a big. Yeah, HimX said, our existing capacity is more than sufficient to support our hundreds of millions of annual sales for us. We will utilize our existing fabs, which are actually fully utilized for this application, can already generate hundreds of millions of annual sales for us with a very different profit. They saying demand outstrips supply. We are not worried about competition. The customers have put it out right up to us that there are potential demand in the early stage, and there's actually more, much more that outweighs what we can supply, especially in the context of mass production. They also said once mass production begins, we believe CPO, co-packaged optics, again, your kind of photonics thesis, will deliver the strongest growth among all our product lines. Growth is likely to sustain for the years to come. So memory and photonics have been where the bottlenecks have been isolated across the, at least semiconductor supply chain for now. And those are the names that have caught the bid. Zscaler's up 5.4. I think that's getting bid from Fortinet, which absolutely demolished earnings. This one deserves the 15% right here. I mean, they crushed at a level that I've never seen Fortinet crush before. It was one of the smaller cybersecurity companies at 65 billion. That's up 15%. CrowdStrike is also catching a bid off that 2.68. CrowdStrike was at 330 a month ago. That's now at 480. And then you had DoorDash also kind of miss on revenue, beat on EPS. That stock's up 9%. Not sure why the street loves it that much. But DoorDash right there getting a bit more of a bit. People are asking, why is Micron down today? So once again, Micron gave a dip opportunity yesterday at 628, and then we recovered. I wonder if today down 2% is just basic pre-market stuff. Some of your photonics plays also were down. Coherent had a good earnings, not as good as Lumentum. That stock down 5%. Granted, it's up 50% for the year. So once again, a Micron that's up 117% if it's down 2%. I don't know if people care too much. And then Lumentum also down 2% after being down 5% yesterday as well. Amazon US Bank expands strategic collaboration with AWS for digital transformation. Amazon just keeps announcing more stuff. Another announcement that Amazon had today, they're expanding access to oral Ozempic with same-day delivery. Amazon Pharmacy expands to access to Novo Nordisk's oral Ozempic, offers same-day prescription delivery across nearly 3,000 cities. Feels very obvious at this point that Amazon is going to just continue to become one of the most important companies on the planet. Today, we have a lot of important earnings. CoreWeave is on deck. That was up 8% yesterday, down 2% today. IREN is also down 3%. That was up 11% yesterday. That will also have earnings. You have SoundHound, Rocket Lab. I'll be live with Sam. I believe we will listen to IREN. We did technical Wednesday with Jason yesterday. So we're not going to be doing technical Thursday. So we'll probably listen to IREN. And we'll see what Daniel Roberts can give us right here. But we have a lot of other companies reporting before we get into the call. And so this stuff is definitely going to be a big day. SoundHound, Mercado Libre, Airbnb, Trade Desk, Cloudflare, MP, which is another name that's getting some attention in the rare earth space, given the Trump administration does have a stake in that. That's up 1.4%. Open Door, Red Cat, drones, which Kratos didn't have the best earnings. The drone stocks, it's kind of crazy. We got into a war. You would think the drone stocks would catch a bid, and no, they really haven't. They've kind of been a dud all year, even after they pumped in January. So Red Cat, that's going to be an important one. DraftKings, AAOI, another photonics play. HubSpot, Monster Energy, Texas Roadhouse, Dropbox, Win, Sweetgreen, Billings, Lyft, SMR, your nuclear stuff. Just got a lot of companies today that we're going to be able to take a look at as we get through it. Is Matt covering Rocket Lab? You know, I think Matt's in the United Kingdom for work. So he's probably not covering Rocket Lab, but someone will cover it. We will cover it, even if we don't listen to the call. And I'm sure someone will be streaming the call as well. Another update today around these AI companies and how much money they're making. This one was pretty freaking interesting. So Samsung offered their staff 13% of the chip operating profit after AI drove Q1 record net profits to 36.1 billion. Samsung will do more operating profit than Google this year. That implies a 4.7 billion bonus, but the unions at Samsung want a 15% bonus plus a 7% wage hike, and they could start an 18-day strike on May 21st. So you have one of the $8 trillion companies on the planet located in South Korea. Samsung, SK Hynix, not too far behind at $750 billion, which got an 87% price upgrade the other day from one of the South Korean investment firms. So, a lot of these banks think that SK Hynix could basically become a $2 trillion company, which essentially would make Micron closer to a $2 trillion company as well if you put the same multiple on it. You're getting some of the workers at Samsung say, hey, we want a bigger piece of the pie. And as a result of that, there's just so much money going around that Samsung might have to end up paying more of the workers. The fact that there's that much money that they are making off the glut of supply, I mean, it's quite incredible. RXT, 70% up. Rackspace Technology. This stock, this is funny. We were doing TA on this yesterday with Jason. This is hilarious. This stock was at freaking basically $30 in 2021. They've now pivoted to data center work. It's up 71%. It is a small company. 565 million is going to open above $1 billion. They are a cloud computing company based in San Antonio, Texas. I would imagine what they said. Oh, wow. They signed a deal with AMD. There it is. RXT signs a deal with AMD for cloud-based compute. And that's green. RXT quarterly earnings. They lost 6 cents a share. They beat estimates on revenue. And the AMD deal, I'm trying to get some more details on this, is why the street's pumping. A while ago, it was you partner with NVIDIA and you make a deal. Now it's you partner with AMD. I'm looking at the specifics of this deal right here. They are working with NVIDIA to rent GPU capacity by the hour and carry the operational burden themselves, including integration, security, and accountability. The collaboration proposes to invert the model by integrating AMD chips. Throughout this understanding, the companies aim to establish a new category of managed enterprise AI infrastructure embedded in a governed operating model. Yeah, I mean, again, I think you have to... It's one of the, so let's ask this question to everybody before we get into some of the other news. I'll actually do a poll right here. I mean, I feel like you have to either be a believer or a non-believer at this point of what's happening in regards to the supply chain and the data centers and the construction and the buildings of AI. We'll talk about eBay in a second. You either believe in this or you don't. If you believe in it, every dip has to be bought. And again, it doesn't have to be like you buy the dip if stock's down $10 or something. But the point is, when there are opportunities, regardless of why the opportunity is presenting itself, you would have to assume it's not because we've topped. It's because of something that the market is being inefficient about, just like in March. And we will eventually get through it. And a lot of these names will continue to go higher if the token generation, the compute capacity simply is going up. So the question is, do you believe this semi build out lasts for another 5 years? I think the EPS speaks for itself. Yeah, and I think that's also why, when you listen to some of the bears make their arguments, it's hard to fathom the .com comparison. It sounds comparative when you bring up the Buffett indicator and the stock price performance and all this stuff, but the earnings growth is inconceivable compared to, and the guidance on the raising of the earnings growth, which Micron will crush again, just like SanDisk did. SanDisk right there is slightly down in the pre-market, 1381. I mean, if you believe that that's going to continue, it's just harder and harder and harder to deny that some of these names have more room to go. And, that pushes back against some of the arguments around FOMO. It's like, is it FOMO to say that Oracle at 200 will eventually be Oracle at 300 or 350 as compute capacity grows and they will get even more contracts, yada, yada? Is it crazy to say Nebius will eventually be 250? Now, it's tough to buy it here at these levels, given it's up so much. That's fair. But that's when you really just have to have a long-term view and say, look, if I buy Nebius at 189 and it goes to 160, it'll suck. But DCA is your friend, and the odds that this thing is much higher than 189 over the coming years, that they just get more deals, is probably going to be more relevant than not. And that brings us into the conversation around SpaceX, which this was just a phenomenal thing that happened yesterday. And quite frankly, it was Elon once again proving that he will contradict himself when he needs to contradict himself. So Elon has never been a fan of Anthropic. And, he's called the misanthropic. He's never been happy with the woke AI or all the stuff that they've created. But SpaceX signed an agreement with Anthropic yesterday to provide access to Colossus One. What is Colossus One? 220,000 NVIDIA GPUs. H100s, H200s, and Grace Blackwells. Anthropic plans to use this additional compute to directly improve capacity for Claude Pro and Claude Max subscribers. I think there's two things that are obvious here. Number one, Grok is not working. If Grok had the level of demand that ChatGPT, Gemini, or Claude did, Elon would use all the compute capacity that he bought from Jensen over the past 2 years and use it to surface demand for Grok. I mean, you have Claude literally stopping people from making multiple accounts because they don't have the compute capacity. And then Elon sitting on all these GPUs that he doesn't technically need for Grok because there's just not that much demand for Grok. So anyone saying that, this was him being charitable or something, like, no, it's a business decision. Grok obviously doesn't have the type of demand. Like, I've seen some people try to defend this. I'm like, what are you talking about? If Grok had 1 billion people every day try to code up their own website every other second or something, like, obviously he would need more compute. He doesn't, because there's just not that demand, because the model's not as good. Doesn't mean the model's dead. It just doesn't mean it's that good. So he's being strategic and saying, look, people need to buy SpaceX stock when it goes public. We need more revenue streams. We have all these excess GPUs. We just acquired XAI. Why don't we license it just like a Nebius does, just like a CoreWeave does, just like an Iren does, and become a neocloud? And we could become the ultimate neocloud because we have more compute, we have more GPUs than all those companies. The estimates that some people ran on this would be about $5 billion a year in revenue for XAI based on this one deal of licensing the cohort of GPUs that they're licensing to Anthropic. Anthropic loves it because now they have more capacity for Claude Code. All they care about is compute. It is literally an arms race for compute, right? That's what they need in order to grow. And I think SpaceX loves it because they weren't using the GPUs anyway for their specific workflows or their workloads, which means now they get to make extra revenue. And so to me, it actually makes a lot of sense. I think it's strategic. I think it's another way to juice up the IPO and get people to be excited about it. But it also highlights that Grok is just not working. And I think Elon's admitting it without admitting it, which is fair. It's like, it just didn't end up winning in the race for the models. But that doesn't mean that Elon can't still monetize the GPUs. And again, Anthropic's happy about it because they are growing like crazy and they need a lot more compute.
Growth per year. In the first quarter of this year, we saw, if you were to annualize it, 80x growth per year in revenue and usage, and so that is the reason we have had difficulties with compute. Right, we've planned for anything from it only grows a little to it grows 10x, and yet we saw 80x. And so, as you saw today with the SpaceX compute deal, we're working as quickly as possible to provide more compute than we have in the past. We'll continue to do so. We'll pass that compute on to you as soon as we can do so. I guess I hope the 80x growth doesn't continue, because that's just crazy and it's too hard to handle. I hope for some more normal AI normal numbers, a mere 10x. But we will manage it absolutely as best we can, and we're every day trying to obtain even more compute that we can pass on to you. We're sorry if sometimes it takes some time, but we're gonna keep going to acquire as much as we can.
I mean, when someone is laughing about how fast they're growing and the fact that they need that much growth to be able to sustain the level of demand that they're getting, forget the revenue growth that they're putting up, forget the raw numbers, 1 billion to 44 billion. Just the way he's speaking is like, yeah, I mean, it would be nice to not grow 80x. 10x would be more reasonable, because it's really hard to handle that type of growth. I mean, you talk about demand issues. It's like the press release yesterday said that Anthropic will sign up as one of the first customers to engage in orbital data center compute, because Anthropic's like, dude, if you can give us the compute on the planet, at the sun, on the moon, in space, wherever you can get it to us, just get it to us, because the demand for what we have, and it's not just them, it's also OpenAI, it's a Gemini, it's a variety of these products, is just insatiable. And that's leading to the type of momentum that we're seeing. So that type of commentary also tells me we might not be as early as we were 3 years ago, but we are still in the early innings, because again, there's still billions and billions of people on this planet. I mean, I would venture there's maybe 1 billion people across the world that use AI realistically. Just like there's only, I think, about 4.7 billion people that even use the internet. There's still half of the world. or 40% of the world that doesn't even use the internet. So, you know, if they're not even on the internet yet, AI is going to take a while to get there once they eventually come on the internet or use AI. Then obviously that's also going to be super, super important to see how this plays out. We are spoiled by Amit's public speaking skills. That was kind of funny, dude. He was having a little bit of a moment right there. He was having a bit of a moment.
We saw, if you were to annualize it, 80x growth per year in revenue and use.
That's a lot of ins, bro. Even I don't stutter that. I mean, I stutter, but not that much.
80x growth per year in revenue.
That's like an elongated stutter. Like I've stuttered. I think the max I've repeated a word is like 4 to 5 times. This dude went for almost 15 times.
To annualize it, 80x growth per year in revenue.
He's set as many ins as he is generating tokens every day for his customers. Paul Tudor Jones, his thoughts on if we're in a bubble or not.
In terms of the markets, we're at these record highs. It's a remarkable situation. I think in large part driven by AI.
Correct.
On the other end, we have the situation in the Middle East, which has been a question mark. But for whatever reason, at least the way the markets are thinking about it, maybe not as big a question mark as we might think. You just got back from a big AI conference that I think has your head spinning. Right. And I thought maybe you could help us understand. And I remember last year you were with us, I think right around this time, right, when you had been to maybe the same conference.
50 years conference.
And I think you had people, frankly, a little freaked out last year.
Yeah, I would say, this one was really interesting. Some of the key takeaways. First, the good part. The good part is, in 2 years with mRNA vaccines, empowered by AI, start a war so he can get reelected. And at the time, I don't know what I thought. That's the dumbest thing. That's how could Hollywood even write that? And then of course now it's kind of like, okay, well that's politics 101. It's the starting of the playbook. So.
Although it hasn't really helped Trump's approval ratings in any way, shape, or form.
No, but I'm just saying life imitates art too often, right? So that simulation gave me pause. Then I'd say the one that I thought was the most interesting. So there was the question, because there was a discussion about how is AI going to have an ethical and moral foundation? And one of the heads of one of the models said, we're going to take the greatest human beings in history with the greatest wisdom, and that's probably going to use foundationally how we do it. So we'll have Jesus Christ, and we'll have Aristotle and Socrates, and we'll have Gandhi, and we'll have the greatest humans, and that's probably how these models are going to be able to talk to us when we have our own personal bots. And then someone said, okay, how many people in this room believe you have a soul? No more definition than that. Than that. Out of the 50 people in that room, how many do you think said we have a soul?
48.
People have a soul.
48.
I'm going to go low.
Okay. What's your number?
10%.
You're right. It was 5. 5 out of 45 said we have a soul. Now.
And that's who's deciding the future of humanity.
But just hold it. You have to realize these are the smartest scientists, mathematicians, physicists in the world who've risen to the top.
Okay, I don't know if that has anything to do with what's going on with AI. I guess his argument is we're going to take the smartest people and train models on them. I don't know if that's necessarily going to work when it comes to setting up an ethical foundation for AI. Maybe it does. But the point is, he's, I think, even conceding right there that the fact that our future is going to be governed by some of these models means that we need to train these models on some of the best people that we've had in the past, is establishing the fact that these models are going to be super, super important. I mean, where do you keep your soul? I have no idea. I have... Becky and Andrew must just be like, I don't know how to answer this question. Micron right there, down about 2%. So, even Paul Tudor Jones, who has been cautious around this AI revolution, he is actually more cautious than Howard Marks. Howard Marks thinks it's not a bubble at all. Paul Tudor Jones has said, we've got maybe 1 or 2 years left. That's one of the quotes he had this morning as well, that we have about 1 or 2 years left before this ends up completely collapsing. I mean, if that's the case, then obviously stocks might be very attractive for the next 1 or 2 years. But if it's not 1 or 2 years because we've just got so much more growth to lean on, then, maybe there's a lot more of a thesis in terms of how this is ultimately going to play out. And again, defaulting to what Dario says, if they continue to grow at that level, that's going to be important. Also, it's important to understand that right now, as you can see on this chart right here, 50% of our GDP growth, once again, are these models. It's AI, it's CapEx. So we kind of can't have that slow down in any meaningful way. Iran's foreign minister will stop in Pakistan on his way from China. Saudi Arabia will restrict U.S. access to bases, airspace until U.S. provides proper protection from Iran's attacks, as per Gulf sources. Also, you add Germany's finance minister say Trump's irresponsible war and resulting energy price shock is putting brakes on economic momentum. Okay, again, oil down today, which is good to see because we got some updates around more negotiations. Hopefully that continues. You got the Saudis who want some more protection. Obviously, their refineries have been hit. Iran's foreign minister is going to Pakistan. Trump is going to China soon. Trump did say that he thinks he can get a deal done before he goes to China, which is in 8 days. And hopefully we see what happens. I'm not doing a poll on where you guys think your soul lives. Goodness, where... What would the choices even be on that poll? Where is your soul? What did you guys say on the other poll, though? So we got a minute until we open. 68% say yes, this semi build out lasts for another 5 years. Okay. I mean, obviously the majority of people, once again, believing that this thing will continue. And if it does continue, then it's likely not going to be stopping the momentum that soon. Let's do red or green real quick in the chat before we get into it. What do we think is happening today? We're going to have Jose on at 10:30, and then we'll have Stock Talk on at 11. So we'll have Jose on at 10:30, gives a breakdown of AMD and all the different semiconductor names that had earnings today. And then we'll have Stock Talk on at 11 and give us an update on how he's thinking about this market. Who stutters more, Amit or Dario? I don't stutter that much. I mean, I stutter for sure. I don't think I've ever had that long of a stutter, though. And now I'm going to have to do it just to trip everybody off. I'm going to have to do it. All right, here we go. 5 more seconds of peace and quietness before the inevitable 9:30 a.m., where once again, only the fearful will mute. The people that are ready to embrace everything will not mute because the stock market is now open. All right, wake your ass up. Let's get into it. S&P 500, 735. We are green on the day. A little bit of green, but we are green. Everything else is going red. CoreWeave down. Okay, CoreWeave down 6 is a little aggressive. That's a pretty ugly candle. Iren down 4, Lumentum down 3, Coherent down 5, Micron down 2, SanDisk down 3, Nebius down 5. All right, so some of your hottest data center stocks, memory stocks, compute stocks from yesterday, immediately getting dumped at the open. ARM is down 7. We'll talk more about their earnings. It really wasn't the best. I would not be surprised to see this pivot, though. I would not be surprised to see this reverse. It's just they did not talk about CPUs in the way that I think they needed to for the street to be super excited. DoorDash up 8. CrowdStrike up 5. Fortinet up 20. They actually had a great earnings. The stock has been dead for about a couple years. Well, I would say since like late 2024. So it's getting some momentum right here. It was at this price basically around end of 2023. 107.77. Back to that. That's now up 19%. Zscaler, that's up 7%. HIMX, that's up 20%. Another photonics play. Snowflake up 11% based on Datadog. Datadog is up 35%. The street seemed to really like those numbers. Qualcomm down 2. DRAM ETF down 1.7. Oklo down 1.7. Starbucks down 1%. Astera down 4. Western Digital down 2. Applied down 2. Korea is down 1%. Intel's down 1%. This isn't a lot of red, but it's all the typical semiconductor names that were green over the past couple of days are getting a little bit of a hit in the pre-market. SoFi's green. Zeta's green. Adobe's green. Salesforce is green. Atlassian is green. I bet Palantir is green. Palantir is green. I would imagine Salesforce is green. Salesforce is green. So software getting a bid, even if it's a tiny one. Google lost 400 pretty quickly, 397. Space as well, getting okay. So space, fintech, and software, market cares about again. We'll see how long that lasts. And then semis taking the hit today. Meta, I guess you could put into that camp since Meta rallies when Micron goes down. Microsoft as well, 422. That's IGV. That's going green. OSS had a monster move yesterday. It continues right here, up 7%. I did not sell any of my OSS yesterday. Did not expect a 55% move. Stock Talk will probably explain more about that move and kind of why he thinks it went as vertical as it did when he gets on the show. But massive move, continuing 1620. I think yesterday got to 1640, then came back down to 15. So you're starting to see probably a lot more people get excited about it. 1632, that's up 6.4%. AAOI, is that getting a dump? That is getting a dump, down 5. Apple, all-time highs, 4.26 trillion. It's been a while since Apple got to all-time highs. There you go, 4.25 trillion. That is great for the S&P. It's great for my stock draft. And I mean, it's great for the broader economy as Apple continues to have massive demand for their products. I contributed to that 2 weeks ago, buying a new iPhone. But the supply shortages are the issue, which is why Intel has also been catching the bid this week, given Apple's probably going to rely on them. Intel flips green. Intel flips green. Tesla, did we get 410? We are at 410 exactly, up 2.8%. So nice pivot from 395 to 410. You know, honestly, the reason I would say this is happening, just like top of mind, I think that the street thinks, all right, if Elon just made SpaceX into a neocloud, eventually, what if he does something similar, either by combining SpaceX and Tesla or just having Tesla rent out excess compute? Now, Tesla needs a lot of compute as well, but maybe that's another revenue stream that could get the street to be more excited. CoreWeave, that's down 4. Now, one could argue CoreWeave, Iran, and Nebius are down because SpaceX became a neocloud last night, and people are saying that reduces demand for their products. I think that's a very weird take, given how much demand there is for compute in general. So, like, yeah, Nebius is not getting the Anthropic deal, but you know, I'm sure there's plenty of other deals that they'll be able to get. Nebius right there down 4%. Micron down 1.5. Coherent, that's down 4. Celsius, are we green? Celsius is flat. DOCN, DigitalOcean, that stock is also down 7. Now, it was up 40 over the past week, so can't blame it to be taking a little bit of a breather. Corning also was up 18% yesterday, fell down about 9%. Now it's up about 2% with that NVIDIA partnership, which is, I think, very bullish. SoFi, 1630. Rubrik, all your software names finally catching a bid today. I don't know how long it's going to last, though, because even yesterday, software was up for a little bit, and then Micron came back to 660. Software ended up dumping. So maybe the rotation for the day is software over semis, but it's only been 5 minutes. So we have to see if that sticks through. Grab's up 1%. Starbucks down 2%. Dell's down 2.8%. Adobe, Salesforce, Zeta, Atlassian, all green. UNH, that is flat. Shift4, did they have earnings yet? That's up 16%. I would imagine they had earnings. Disney was up yesterday. We talked about Datadog. Celsius, oh, they did have earnings. Celsius beat by 41% on EPS. They beat by 3% on revenue. EPS is up 128% year over year. Revenue's up 130%. Street does not care. That's a pretty big beat. McDonald's had earnings. They beat by 2% on EPS, beat by 1% on revenue. McDonald's is flat. And then you had Pagaya that had earnings. They beat by 30% on EPS. I believe this is another fintech, missed by 2% on revenue. PGY, that is up 8%. Okay, so fintech and software, at least somewhat getting some momentum. Meta, 621. Nice to see Meta finally back into the 620s. Shake Shack, down 28%. Kind of scared about what that means for Texas Roadhouse if any misses exist on revenue. Shift4, they beat by 1% on EPS. They beat by 2.7% on revenue. So you had a beat and a beat on Shift4. Tesla, 413. I don't think there's a specific Tesla headline outside of the SpaceX Anthropic deal. Maybe that's what's helping it, but I don't see anything. Oh, hold on. No, you had this headline. Tesla China-made EV sales jumped 36% in April. China-made EVs rose 36%. Shanghai delivered 79,478 Model 3s. This is Tesla's 6th consecutive month of total sales growth. That is definitely your headline right there. Giving you some momentum. 412.75 up 3.4% as that one continues to go green. OSS, did we just go red? Okay, we didn't go red yet, but we lost a good chunk of the pump, 60.95 to 15.67. Corning, 184.95. Sezzle, that's up 27%. They had a great earnings last night as well. That was a big one. Google is not 400, but it is 397. I mean, it touched 400 pre-market, so I would imagine it's inevitable. This will get that break above 400. Look at AMD, be a champ. Even though it's down on the day, it's down a couple bucks. Like, you talk about normalizing the 400s. It's only been 2 days, but imagine for the next month, it's just a 4 handle. And that makes it easy for people when it drops low to buy the dip, even with a 4 handle. Fortinet, 22%, as that continues to go green. When did you buy OSS? In early January, around 990. We actually had Stock Talk pitch the thesis when we were in Vegas together. I think it was like 850 at the time on that stream we did. So he'll talk more about it today, but yeah, around 990 is, I think, when I got in. Rocket Lab, 83.96. Oracle, 198.84. That's up 2.5. Keel Infrastructure, this is Bitfarms. This actually went up yesterday from 3 to 4. Now it's at 4.01, still down 2.4%. ServiceNow catching a little bit more of a bid, as that is green. Reddit's down. QXO is down. Rocket Lab's down. Where's AppLovin? AppLovin's down 5, dude. That is crazy. It's markets being so, all of software is pumping too. So this is an AppLovin issue right now. Something AppLovin said market did not like. And they're not even technically a SaaS. I mean, I know they're qualified as a SaaS, but they're not really software as a service. Robin had also read Bitcoin losing 81, unfortunately, 80.7, as that's down. Software's up because of Datadog. That's correct, but not all software, apparently, given AppLovin. Oh, they had a mixed shelf offering. Charlie, how much did they offer in the mixed shelf? Do you know? Wolfspeed, that's up 5.4. Fastly beat on revenue, or beat on EPS by 44%, but the guide was bad. And that's why that stock's getting hit. It was kind of the opposite of DOCN. Well, the guide wasn't bad. It was just in line. It wasn't a massive beat, although DOCN is also getting hit right there, 7.65%. So that's why that one is getting hit 30. Had a recovery to 24, then fell back to 20. So we have to see where it bottoms at. Fastly still is a software company, technically, even though it's a CDN. But the CDN infrastructure stocks have been doing better as pure play CDNs versus software companies. Apple trying to go for 290, 289.40. Silver's pumping today. Is it silver? Wow, silver is getting a pump. Yeah, and gold as well. CrowdStrike's being carried by the Fortinet pump. I agree. Gold right there, up almost 2%, 4,700. Silver now at 81. It's been a while since we've seen silver actually make a move. January 30th kind of marked the top for both silver and gold. And since then, they've had bounces, but not really moves to be excited for. Fluence Energy, 25%. That's up. This one was down from about 30 back in January. Fuel cell technology, decent earnings, 24%, as that is green. Meta, are we getting a move? We're getting something, folks. 622. We're getting a little something here on the day. Microsoft moving with it as well. Uber also had a great earnings along with DoorDash. Look at Microsoft, 3%. That's a big move for Microsoft. Microsoft's still a $3 trillion company. It's crazy because it was at $4 trillion for so long. It's just this year has not been its best year. Uber as well, that's up 1%. And that's green. I think profit taking is happening from SanDisk and Micron going into the disrespected Metas and Microsofts. So I think we need a lot more data to say that, because Micron being down 2%, I don't know if that's enough to say it's full on profit taking and rotating. I think Micron needs to go below 600 for that thesis to be legit. And if it does, I wonder how many people come in and buy the dip. You also have to ask yourself how much strength and momentum continues to be there for a Micron, a SanDisk, a Corning. Name any of the semi names that have gone vertical. How many days can people wake up and say, I'm buying into them? And usually you need a catalyst. You have the SanDisk earnings, which was the catalyst. If you have Micron earnings, which is the next catalyst, you have the Corning NVIDIA partnership. Every day, if there's that new catalyst, I think people can get up and just be like, okay, this is really important. But, if that catalyst kind of just dies down, even for a few months, maybe that's where we see the rotation. SoFi, 1637. Honest had in my opinion, not strong revenue growth quarter. Revenue was negative 19% year over year. It was down 10%. It has flipped to up 9%. This is also another small cap. Their guide was better and their gross margins were better. So that might be what the street likes, but the revenue growth itself was a bit down. Tanner says, what are you listening to tonight? Tanner, I think Sam and I are doing Iren. So you can probably do CoreWeave. I feel like I owe everybody Iren because I said I was going to do it last time. I forgot Amazon was the same time. And then ended up doing Amazon instead. So we're going to do Iren today. Tanner will probably do CoreWeave. Pound share 138.40. Coming back to life just a little bit. 3.5% right there. Just a little bit. That's green. Apple 289. SPY 734. Redwire, that's up 1.5. Redwire diluted yesterday by about 350 million. Earnings weren't that good. But at least the stock is kind of holding up. ServiceNow, okay, 6%. I don't know why the street woke up today and said software is what we like, but it goes to show you how much, if you believe the software sell-off is irrational and it's not terminally dead, on a day like today where software just magically gets a pump when semis are down, I think it proves the thesis, at least to an extent, that these are algos that will dump software and pump semis and then dump semis and pump software. Now, they're not going to get, 200% year-to-date types of pumps like some of the semiconductor names, but ServiceNow getting back to 103 where it was before earnings, which is still a decent return from where most people bought it at in the low 90s, high 80s, is not a bad trade at all. And maybe the algos capitulate to give us some of that. NVIDIA basically flattened at a 207. 207. Yeah, ServiceNow should change their name, as Andy says, to Service Currently Right Now. I can't believe I haven't thought of that before. I need to get on a phone call with Bill McDermott. I will get that stock pumping, baby. I will get it absolutely freaking pumping. Why is Figma up 11%? Because it's a software stock. And today the street doesn't think Anthropic's going to kill it. It's actually comical. Like, were any of these stocks 10%, 12% worse than where they were today? No. And there's no major headlines that change the software narrative. But nonetheless, the street thinks of them differently. And if the semis start pumping in the next 30, 40 minutes and software starts dumping, it's going to be even funnier. NVIDIA, 207.50. 207.50. IGV, 91.57. Did the Dow hit 50K? The Dow is once again 50,000. We are back to the Dow being where it was before Pam Bondi proclaimed how important it was for the Dow to be 50. Wow, Palo Alto getting a nice little move as well. Palo Alto, there you go, 198. That's up 8. They've had a bunch of acquisitions this year. CrowdStrike at 499. Wow, CrowdStrike 500 almost. That's Fortinet and IGV coming together to pump up the semis. Zscaler also getting a bid up 10%. There you go. If you're heavy into the semis, today is your day. At least in the first 15 minutes of the open. All of them getting some love. Micron continues to fall, down about 3.6 right here. Figma's up 9. Intel, how down is that? Intel's down 3, same as Micron. Axon also had a great earnings. That's up 7. This is seen as another software name as well. It's pretty incredible to see. Yeah, not a nice day for the semis. But again, the semis have had a lot of nice days, right? So can't complain that Intel's down from 115 to 109. But see, this is what happens, right? Like, people who bought it at 115 yesterday are probably annoyed, thinking the semis would just keep running. And it's a one-day break. It might end up going to 115 by the end of the day. If this thing starts having multiple red days, that's where you start to get the momentum that dies out. And the semis just haven't had that since the ceasefire. They have not had multiple red days. I mean, every single day, it's at least one part of the stack ended up going green. The software names have had multiple red days, which is why I think people said, screw it, I'm done with software, I'm going to semis. If that actually flips, which I'm skeptical that easily flips, but obviously the strength in semis means that, they could take a break, then that might get some people to sell out of their semiconductor names. ASTS not holding the pump. Not holding the pump. Yeah, you do have the Cerebras IPO coming up as well, which is also going to be a tailwind for a bunch of the chip names. ARM, let's talk about that real quick. It was, again, relatively basic quarter. So ARM is trading at 220 times earnings, 45 times 2026 revenue. They grew 20%, not massive growth. The core royalty business, which is really how ARM makes their money from all these patents, slowed from 27% to 11% last quarter. The operating margin fell from 33% to 29.4%. And then the only kind of core argument they made is around agentic AIs for CPUs, but they said that they are demand or they're supply constrained, not demand constrained. The problem is if a lot of other companies like a Qualcomm, Intel, AMD, et cetera, if everyone starts saying we're going to build all these crazy CPUs, does it start to kind of dilute the entire thesis around CPUs in terms of the amount of demand, supply, imbalance that there is? And so the quarter itself was really not super impressive, but the stock also has had a massive year already. So it's not crazy to see it down 7%, but he did not pump the way Lisa Su did the CPU narrative. Even as you're listening to the call, there's not that much of an emphasis that like you have to really understand ARM architecture if you want to be ready for the CPU revolution. AAOI down 9%. Down 9%. Lumentum and Coherent also going down as well, as that's red. Figma still getting a pump. Spy, are we green? Spy is about to go red. Hala says, apparently American Airlines blocks YouTube now. It won't let me see the stream, and the only thing that it plays on Sling is commercials. I have to monitor the chat for updates. That's crazy that it'll show you the chat, but it won't show you the stream. American Airlines needs Starlink because United has started to do very well with Starlink. Are you adding any software names? I mean, look, the software names that I have added on the dip are Palantir and Oracle. And, you know, Palantir 123, 124, Oracle 130, 160. I think the only other software names that are super, super attractive, I mean, all of them you could say are technically attractive, but an AppLovin to me is attractive, a Reddit's attractive, a ServiceNow still at these levels, you know, given everything that Jensen has been saying about them, given their guidance for 2030 is attractive. And the other, you know, major one that's attractive at the end of the day is Microsoft, even though that's not necessarily a software name. But if you don't want to pick and you just believe in the rotation, IGV is still down 15% year to date. IGV as it crosses 91. I know a lot of people have picked ServiceNow, and I do not hate that pick at all. So, yeah, if the softwares can have another couple good months, if not good weeks, we could flip green on software completely. And that would have Microsoft probably back to 450, Palantir back to 150, Oracle well above 200, ServiceNow probably to 110. Zeta as well. Again, I never think of Zeta as a software company. It's such a small company, but yes, Zeta is software. The problem is it gets classified as software in the sell-off. But this is another software company growing 50% that just has not been able to catch the bid because all the liquidity has been going to the semis. All the cybersecurity names obviously also are your software adjacents in cybersecurity. And based on this new Mythos model, it seems kind of obvious why we're going to need more and more cybersecurity. Micron getting a recovery, 640 to 655. Now, here's the test today. Here's the test. Does Micron flip green and at the same time does software flip red? Because if that happens, it will actually be hilarious. I kind of want to see that happen just to prove that this is what's happening. I want to see Micron go up another $10, flip green. IGV at this moment is what? 91. If IGV goes down to 89, I mean, it would be hilarious. Because then we know how this market is being controlled in the context of semis and software. SanDisk down 4. SanDisk down 4 here. EU agreement on U.S. trade deal within reach, says top lawmaker. Trump did have those new tariffs on their cars the other day. Trump just tweeted a very crazy picture. Oh my. Oh my. Okay. Well, he tweeted this Okay, so the caption is a highly accurate depiction of sleepy Joe Biden administration. Tremendous damage done, but we're back. That is Joe Biden sleeping, Obama with the auto pen, Hillary Clinton, ice cream, and then I think that's his son snorting a line of coke. That's kind of, you could tell that Trump is definitely feeling energized and emboldened by the progress of this market and the economy for him to tweet stuff like that. Is that real? That is indeed real. The last time he said the stock market is at all-time highs, we ended up topping S&P 7,000. That was back in January. So you had a lot of people a little afraid last night that he once again said the S&P is at all-time highs. Hopefully that is not a top signal. But he is pretty exuberant about where the S&P is going. 733.78. S&P is red. Pictures like that is why we need more memory. Oh my goodness, dude. Everyone can take the craziest example of AI and just be like, that is why we need more high bandwidth memory, or we need more co-packaged optics. And it's true, because technically that's why. Okay, CrowdStrike, some red candles, Fortinet red candle, Zscaler red candle, Palantir, small red candle, ServiceNow as well, 95 to 93.7, red candle, Microsoft, red candle. The green candles are on none other than Micron. I think this thesis is correct, folks. I'm starting to get convinced. You can either have semis or have software. You cannot have both. You just can't have both at this point. I mean, look at that. Look at that green candle on Micron breaking out to 660 as Microsoft tops out potentially at 425. It's pretty incredible. BlackBerry, that's down. Rocket Lab, that's down too. Reddit had a great earnings. I mean, this is kind of surprising that the street's really taking it down from 175. But if they're not going to give AppLovin the bid, I guess they're not going to give Reddit the bid. AppLovin, 462. As we're seeing this. HIMX, that is also still green, 42%. Shy Guy, thanks for the super chat. In my opinion, institutions are buying back into software, retail buying into memory semis. Institutions are using retail as exit liquidity. I have heard that theory over the past couple of days. I'm not going to say that theory is wrong because we do have a lot of the data from the hedge funds that they are exiting a lot of their semiconductor positioning. We also have a lot of data that retail is piling into DRAM. Oh, the stat on DRAM yesterday was crazy. I got to pull this up. So I don't think that theory is crazy, but at the end of the day, we are going to find out I think over the next month or two, like if Micron gets up to the 750s, if SanDisk gets up to the 1600s, then maybe that is more institutional exposure than not. But yeah, if you start to see those stocks fizzle out a bit, Micron basically about to go green right here as software starts going down, then maybe it's not just retail. But that theory has been put out there over the past couple of days that retail is buying the bags of the institutional guys and they're heading out. And it's not just institutional guys. I've seen multiple people, at least on X, that have been early Micron or early some of the semiconductor names. And I mean, this one guy, he was super early to Micron. He tweeted like this sarcastic tweet that people took seriously that like, Micron's going to go to 5 trillion or whatever. Like he just had all this bullish stuff posted on Micron and all the comments were like agreeing with him. So then he quote tweeted that tweet yesterday and said, I am literally selling all my memory. I did this as a joke to see how many people would agree with me. And the fact that I was being sarcastic and I had all these bullish statements about memory and bottleneck supply chains for AI, but everyone in the comments agreed with me. The post had like 2 million views. He said, that's my signal to be out. Now, again, he could be wrong there because maybe agreeing with that sentiment is consistent with the earnings growth. But you are seeing more people be a little bit more cautious about how much exuberance is there. Celsius, 5%. NVIDIA, we're getting a pump. Finally, 209. 209 on Mr. NVIDIA. Can we break 210 and then 215, which is where we were at just a week ago, which would be nice to see. The stats on memory, first of all, South Korea is now the world's 7th largest equity market. It is overtaking Canada. It's 4.59 trillion. SK Hynix and Samsung have more than doubled this year. Also, take a look at this. Micron, Intel, and SanDisk call volume is more than double the S&P 500. So yesterday, single name calls on Micron, SanDisk, and Intel have more than doubled all of the calls on the S&P 500. So obviously, you got a lot more people buying call options there. And then DRAM, more volume yesterday than Walmart, Chevron, Robinhood, and Boeing. $2.2 billion in volume, up 75% in a month, with $3.7 billion in AUM. So the buyers are there. The buyers are there for memory. The question is going to be, how long can the memory momentum last? Palantir getting a little bit more of a bid, 138.42. That's up 3.5. Zeta up a little bit. Microsoft trying to get a bigger bid. Was it retail going to DRAM? DRAM, those types of ETFs kind of tend to attract retail, so we don't know for sure. But yeah, I would say the DRAMs of the world, those round hill investments are built for retail, to be honest, especially given the expense ratio, because a lot of institutions just wouldn't pay that much for that. Meta 622, so yeah, you could make that argument. Duolingo 107, that's also slightly green. Tesla, we passed 415, 412. 412 on Tesla. 10-year is not really moving down as much as we need it to be. 10-year is, are we at 4.3? 4.338. So it's still up from where it was yesterday. ALB, that's up another 12% today, $25 billion company, as that one joins the party into this AI sector. Amid, if all the money goes into the ETF, do they have more money to buy the shares to send the price higher? Well, the ETF is just going to be allocating the capital that they get to buy shares at the price that they're priced at that time. Which, yeah, theoretically, if there's more people investing in the ETF, then there's more of a bid on those memory names. But if there's also people at the same time selling the memory names, then the ETF is just buying those prices at spot prices. They're not really pushing it up higher. It's similar to the Bitcoin ETF, right? The ETF can get inflows, but if Bitcoin's price is down, then the inflows might not match enough of a supply demand imbalance to really get a move in Bitcoin's price, which is basically what we've seen with IBIT over the past year at this point. IBIT also, that's down 1.26% on the day, which is why Hood also is going down. Apple 290 all-time highs for Mr. Apple. 290.80. 290.80. As that continues to hit all-time highs. That's pretty cool. It's nice to see Apple. It's a big part of the S&P. 7%. 7% to get there. What do you think about Iran's earnings today? Iran has announced a bunch of different stuff that seems bullish, but they need a deal. So I wonder if it's good news before they have an earnings, which is not that good, or if it's good news leading up to a good earnings. I honestly have no idea, but we're going to find out today. RXT, 75%. Still going up 75%. Poet, did we get a move right there as well? Poet. Again, this one, a lot of people are getting more excited about photonics in general, and this one has not moved. Now, again, they don't have a lot of contracts to be able to get people excited for it to move. They don't have any major hyperscaler deals or anything like that. But people might be taking a shot for the hell of it if they end up getting it. Intel starting to go green, but still red. U.S. March construction spending rose 0.6% month over month. Street wanted 0.2. That is a beat, and that is indicative of CapEx. That is indicative of CapEx. Wow, construction spending 0.6% month over month, over 0.2 expected. A lot more jobs in CapEx. AMPX is down 25%. Okay, someone tell me why. I know so many of you are bullish on AMPX. I don't understand this company that well. They had a beat in Q1. They missed EPS slightly. $500 million in defense orders. Why is it getting hit? This is batteries, right? If I'm not wrong, this is batteries. I believe it is ultra high energy density lithium ion batteries using a proprietary 100% silicon anode technology. Maybe this one is worth looking at. We know battery is going to be really important. I don't know why it's down 25, but probably worth taking a look at. Maybe this is an opportunity here. Oh, well, year to date, it was up freaking 100%. So that explains, dude, so many of these names. And a lot of them, Jason was talking about them yesterday, a lot of them recover. Even Celestica was down so much after being up so much. Same thing with Rambus. They're starting to recover. It wouldn't surprise me if there's not a thesis breaker in AMPX that it recovers. Which theoretically would mean this is your opportunity. They had dilution. Okay, if it's dilution is the reason why they're down, that actually is a better reason for the stock to be down than the actual earnings. Chris, thanks for the super chat. Can Iran announce deals that are that they're in discussions for deals? Probably not. I mean, usually they have to announce when a deal is officially done. So I would imagine they wouldn't announce where they're in discussions or anything, unless it's like a formal SEC document. Meta getting another pump, 624. But, you know, hopefully tonight they actually announce some stuff. GameStop is also down 2%. Honest is making a move. 17%. All right. Someone's buying it today. Gross margins and guidance up. Revenue growth down 20%. Streets up. Whirlpool, we didn't talk about that. That was a pretty ugly earnings yesterday. That's down 12% right here. CFO says appliance demand hasn't been this low since the great financial crisis. Which is kind of crazy. Now, obviously their numbers were horrible. They missed across the entire board, and the tariffs have, you know, not been the best for them, but it seems like it's more of an issue around pure demand. They said we acted decisively to address pricing and cost in the face of rapid deterioration in macroeconomic conditions, but organic net sales were down 6.1% year over year, and then overall revenue growth down 9.6% year over year. One could argue that because the housing freeze is in place in terms of mortgage rates not coming down, that people aren't buying new homes. And if they're not buying new homes, they don't have to buy washers and dryers and fridges and all that stuff as easily. And maybe people aren't upgrading to those as much anymore either. Consumer could be strapped for cash, would say, I'd rather have my 10-year-old fridge, even if it doesn't have a touchscreen on it, you know? And I think that could be the reason for the lack of demand right there. Poet ended up going red. Tesla still green. NVIDIA almost 211. Almost 211. Oscar, is that getting us a bid? Oscar, that's up 20. They had a great earnings as well. Cloud says, I literally just bought a Whirlpool fridge yesterday. Well, I need a lot more of you to buy these freaking fridges. A lot more. Yeah, new fridge or Micron, exactly. New fridge or Micron. 661 on Micron. Micron's about to flip green. Micron is about to flip green. CrowdStrike 498, Figma 20.8, Meta at 622, Palo Alto still up 8. VG should be dumping theoretically. It's actually a good sign for long stocks if some of these oil hedges are going down, but that one's down 6. Oil's down at 90. RXT, is anyone in this name? I mean, this thing 85%. It was a sub $500 million company yesterday. They reported a deal with NVIDIA today, and multi-cloud hybrid cloud solutions that are powering cloud environments was enough on the revenue growth with AMD on the partnership to get this thing to pump. And again, it's easy when it's a $500 million company to make a bigger move. We saw that with OSS yesterday, which today is still flat. But there you go. That's green. I bought it when you mentioned it. I wasn't missing Old Birds 2.0. Where is Birds? Down 2%. Well, Rackspace, a deal with AMD seems a lot more legit than Old Birds. This has been that type of market. These smaller names can go up 70 to 80% in a day if they announce anything that has to do. I mean, even Sterling Infrastructure, which is not a super small name, that's down 5%. That was up 45% in a day. We're talking about $10, $15 billion added of market cap just because of good growth in the context of data centers. VCX, is that still running? People are still buying exposure to Anthropic, I would imagine. VCX, yeah, 15%. Now, it topped out at 570. a while ago. It's up 15% today. This is, again, this is implying Anthropic at I think at this level, around 2.3 trillion market cap from the math we did last time. At 570, it was closer to like $5.4 trillion market cap. So it is paying a premium, but maybe people don't care. SoFi 1639. 1639. AOI still down 7. Still down 7. Google launched the $100 Fitbit Air with no screen, looking to take on Whoop in a growing fitness brand category. You know, given Tanner such an Android fan, he might need to switch from Whoop to Google's Fitbit here. Let's see what we got going on. Apple continuing all-time highs, and Nvidia and Apple leading the way. I think we might be headed back to 212 on Mr. Nvidia, as Jason would call it. Datadog also massive move, up 30%. That's helping the software names, even though, look at Micron, dude. It's about to go green. 50 cents away from flipping green. 50 cents away. Software red, but not, I mean, software getting red candles, but not red on the day, which is nice to see, because if that's the case, maybe software and semis can both kumbaya and pump together. AppLovin, that just flipped green. Micron very close to flipping green. SanDisk not green. It's actually down a bit more, 4%. If everything starts going green, then it's less of a rotation and it's way more of money coming off the sidelines, right? Like real net new capital coming into the market and just buying up anything, which I would imagine is bullish, because then the market doesn't have to choose between certain names. ARM down 8. ARM down 8. AMD is also still down right here. Microsoft up 3% of the day. You're most on Microsoft. I mean, if SMH and IGV are officially going green together, to be honest, everyone finally gets to eat instead of one or the other. SMH almost green, IGV still holding on to a 4%. Again, I think Datadog really helped SMH or IGV today. AppLovin and Palantir could do nothing for IGV. But Snowflake, Datadog helping it out more. And then ServiceNow as well, up 6%. So if we see Apple 300, that puts it at a market cap of, let's do the math right here, 4.5 trillion, basically. Micron, did we flip green? We have flipped green. There you go. So it's like every morning, Micron gives you a $30 dip, and then it moves up. Apple will be at 4.5, and then Nvidia has clearly ran away from Google in terms of market cap. Nvidia right there, 5.15. The Googs stuck at 4.8. BTC still flat. Yes, at the same time, SoFi cannot catch a bid. FinTech doesn't come to the party, even if software does. Microsoft 424. It's kind of weird though. Micron flipped green and SanDisk didn't. So I don't know. Maybe you're seeing a little divergence in those two names in particular. Maybe some people just think Microsoft's or Micron's a less expensive stock because it's like $600 versus $1,300. Maybe that's the reason. But you are still green on Micron. Honest up 18. Yeah, again, guidance was good for Honest. Revenue growth was not, but maybe the street didn't care. This is not a company that might be judged on revenue more than it's judged on their ability to increase the guide. Microsoft at 424. Where are the earnings from yesterday? Let's take a recap of those. Chime is down 9. Beyond Meat's down 14. ARM's down 8. Snapchat's up 1. Snapchat, once again, unprofitable. AppLovin's up 1. DoorDash up 3. DoorDash lost the entire pump. IONQ lost the entire pump. Fortinet's up 23. They deserve it. Kratos down 4. Symbotic down 6. Coherent down 5. Beyond Meat down 14. Chime down 9. Fastly just getting wrecked today. 37, that's down. And then IONQ is also down 3. ARM down 7 as well. Okay, so the majority of these names are red, but some of them still green. Again, position sizing in a lot of these, as Jason talked about yesterday, was super important. If some of them are small trades, then it really doesn't hurt. Like a Fastly, when it gets hit 37% on the day, if you full ported it, obviously it hurts a lot more. If you full ported a Fortinet, it doesn't hurt because you're up 23%, but you would have to pick the right stock. And again, the market's being a little picky here. Some of these names get love, some of these names don't. And I think one thing that Jason is so spot on is like, what is the deal that you announce, right? Like a Fastly in their deck, they had like Duolingo as one of their major new customers, which is just not something to get excited about. RTX announces AMD today. Boom, stock's up a lot, right? Or RXT, I should say. So these companies putting up Corning, right, with NVIDIA. I mean, boom, that's big for Corning. NVIDIA, 213. So I think that's the thesis with the neoclouds as well. The types of companies you announce deals with kind of dictate how much the market perceives your adjacency towards AI. Iran back to going green, 61. And you either have those deals or you don't. Fed's hammock, Iran conflict could affect both sides of central bank's mandate. Raising prices are affecting consumer spending capacity. Okay. Fed's hammock says Fed should keep a neutral policy stance due to uncertainty. Fed's hammock, there is significant uncertainty in the economic forecast. The U.S. just issued new Cuba-related sanctions. Okay. I wonder if Cuba actually is next. Trump has been teasing, but you got one of the Fed presidents basically saying inflation is still a concern. And I guess we're going to see if that ends up continuing to be the prevailing issue for the Fed, and especially for Kevin Warsh. Apple, 290, a little bit of a red candle from 291, but still up. Still up. Palantir, are we going back to 140? She's trying. She is really trying here. 138.94. Again, software helping out today with that. Arista just got wrecked since yesterday. Again, some of these plays, even if they're AI adjacent, they just might not work. You're not going to get all of them to work. Arista is an example of one of them that just didn't work. Symbiotic, down 6. Well, what happened to ARM? So again, we talked about it. Gross margins were down. Revenue was very lackluster, and then they didn't pump CPUs. Not in the way that they needed to. SMCI, look at that, 34. This thing was 19 a few weeks ago. It was 28 before the print. Gross margins doubling year over year for SMCI. Still not the best, but good enough to see those get the move. Salesforce also. It's been a while since you had a nice 4.5% day on Salesforce as that goes green. And we're going to see if ServiceNow can continue matching that. Oh, we had the ARM CEO on just a couple minutes ago. Let's see him talking and explaining the CPU stuff as well.
Are you able to make 2 billion?
Yeah, it's an important point because, first off, you said, can we get the supply in the time that we need? This is not perishable demand, to be clear. This is demand that is firm, sustaining, and very, very robust. Agentic AI puts a huge amount of pressure on the CPU to do all the work around orchestration, scheduling, management of these agents. That's only the work the CPU can do. So while we are in the process of securing supply for that additional demand, the demand's not going away. I'm confident we'll get that supply, and I'm also very confident the demand's going to continue. The other thing we reinforced, Jim, was the fact that we talked about a $15 billion target by our fiscal 31. We are well on track to achieve that. We have the line of sight around that. So I'm very confident we'll be able to do the things we need to get that number.
And we want to put things in perspective. It's been 35 years that ARM has been working in the sector. We think about AMD and how they challenge Intel. But in many ways, the actual product that you make or that you license is superior on multiple different categories. Can you explain why ARM has got the big share?
It starts with the fact that we are the most efficient CPU ever invented. We were born from mobile phones. We have a very, very large market share in smartphones, as you know. Smartphones are all about high performance at low power. We extended that to the data center a number of years ago, and the very first customer we had that was the proof point for that was Amazon. Amazon has a chip called Graviton. They now run Graviton 5 generations. All of that gives them essentially almost equal to better performance at half the power. Amazon would not do 5 generations of ARM CPUs if it was not a fantastic platform. We've now seen it take off with Google, with Axion. We've seen it with Microsoft, and of course, NVIDIA. So yes, the ARM AGI product, ARM in the data center is not new, and we have seen a huge growth path really driven by this power efficiency. And then when you think about all these growths in data centers, gigawatt type data centers, power efficiency is everything. And the savings that you can get using the ARM-based solution is quite significant.
Renee.
All right. Renee trying to prove they are the greatest CPU company that's out there. I mean, Street definitely doesn't think they are, given the stock price reaction, but it's also up a lot year to date. Glass half full. Thanks for the super chat, Amit. We know Tom Lee's prediction for the rest of the year. I would like to know, what is your prediction? I do not know if we easily see a 20% drawdown the way Tom Lee is saying it. In terms of S&P 500 target, it's obviously always hard to make a target, but if we keep rallying the way we're rallying, 8,000 is just not crazy to imagine. It's only 6-7% away from here. So it's not one of those things that is unbelievable to imagine if the earnings growth matches up with it. I do think we've run really fast, really quickly. And so the idea that we get a pullback, it would not surprise me. I don't think it would surprise anybody. I just don't know if it's a 15 to 20% pullback, like Tom is saying. And he's using his history to guide that argument. I can understand 5 to 10, 15 to 20. If we couldn't go down 10%, I mean, we literally went down 8.7%. We didn't even go down 10% during the Iran war when oil was 120. I don't really know what's the catalyst that causes it to happen again. So, no, I would imagine 8,000 is possible. I think I'm more in the camp around 770, 7,800 as a base case. But I just don't see that 20% drawdown that easily. Now, the IPOs, I think, are definitely a big thing to think about. The SpaceX, Anthropic, OpenAI IPO, if that happens this year, I wonder, A, where the liquidity comes from, B, how much euphoria is built into those IPOs. And, that could also be something that we have to think about as we get into the end of the year. But again, maybe the euphoria is worth it if Anthropic keeps growing $12 billion of revenue, which is more than most software companies' full year revenues combined every month. And that, I think, could also get the market to buy up those stocks. Nokia getting dipped 4%, lost 13. Lost 13. As that one's down. Oh, there was an IPO yesterday, by the way. Did anyone see this? Rare Earth Americas, that's up 8 today. This was a IPO around rare earths, and you've got the Trump administration that's somewhat involved in this. I don't think they have a stake in it, but they are connected to it as rare earths start to be seen as another bottleneck that is out there as well. Nebius 192, that is also starting to recover. It was down at 185. Now it's down 1%. RVI is pumping. Why? I don't know. I would imagine, OpenAI, there's a lot of these perpetual futures platforms where you can track the price of these startups or these private companies. OpenAI is one of them. So RVI could be getting pegged to the derivative prices in the essentially crypto markets, because the crypto technology is what's creating this, and the hyperliquids of the world that determine if OpenAI is worth 10% or more every other day, what people are willing to pay for it. Anthropic right now at about 1.2 trillion in the private markets. Micron 680, and that could be getting RVI to pump if their private names go green. Have you heard about the hantavirus or the hantavirus? Yes, I have. I don't know enough about it to meaningfully discuss it. The World Health Organization put out an update. They said they're monitoring the situation. There's been 8 cases. These are essentially viruses that are in rats, if I'm not wrong. And on a cruise ship a week ago, a few people got infected. And there's, I think, 6 to 8 breakouts in the United States that have happened so far. Having said that, I don't know enough about it. And I don't think it's going to get enough media coverage until there's a like meaningful chance that people are afraid that it would get a breakout. Now, this thing was weird yesterday. This guy from 2022 tweeted this. This is a real tweet. It's not fake. June 11, 2022. 2023, Corona ended. 2026, hantavirus. And people have been going crazy. So my response was, okay, do you also know what the next SanDisk is? He didn't give me a response. But yeah, this tweet has been going super viral because people are just like, how the hell did someone say that? So I don't know. Obviously, the first gut reaction people have is like, oh my goodness, global pandemic. Do we have to deal with that again? I think that's a little bit too much panic right now until you actually meaningfully get any level of real evidence that this is happening. So we're not there yet at that level. And I don't think we're going to be there. People don't really know yet if it's transmittable in the way that COVID was. Micron 682. Why is that tweet viral? Because it's from 2022. And the guy's predicting that in 2026, there will be something called hantavirus, right? So it's like, how did someone know that is the question. NVIDIA 213.40. 213.40. Wow, AMD flips. AMD flips green. She flips green. That's actually nice to see. All your memory names flipping green except SanDisk. Nokia red. BlackBerry as well. Kind of flipping green. It was red. Now it's a little bit above 6. Palantir, some red candles back down to 137. Back down to 137. It's Photoshop. It's a literal tweet. You can click on the tweet from an account from 4 years ago. I will say, I mean, if we get another global pandemic, I don't even want to imagine what's going to happen. I am very doubtful we will. When I think back on COVID, it was just absolutely crazy. I was leaving. I mean, Rutgers said, you guys have an extended spring break. Instead of 1 week, it was 2 weeks. And then they were like, yeah, you never have to come back again. And so it was just crazy. Like, we didn't have a real graduation. Everything was virtual. So I can't imagine going through that again. I don't even know if people would be willing to engage in lockdowns again. And, it would be definitely one of those things that is highly debated. I do think the markets would pump because once again, we will probably print trillions and trillions of dollars. Now we have earnings growth. Well, that earnings growth is probably going to dissipate because, if you have some crazy global pandemic. But the point is, you're going to have so much excess liquidity that I definitely won't make the same mistake twice of paying off some loans in 2020 when I should have immediately put that into the market, not realizing the Fed was about to inject $7 trillion of liquidity. Now, will Warsh do that? I don't know. Warsh would probably try his hardest not to do that, but he might have to capitulate if that happens. Kratos, that's down 5. Kratos is down 5. Yeah, crypto would go crazy. I agree. I mean, there's already a meme coin for hantavirus. It's up like 2,000% as of last night. So the Solana degens officially are monetizing on this. Nebius 193.37. We'll have Jose on in a couple minutes. We'll get all of his thoughts on AI and AMD. And see what he thinks about this. Again, Lisa Su, the biggest thing that I think she made clear on that call was that the CPU to GPU ratio is becoming 1-to-1. And if it becomes more than 1-to-1, then we're going to need more and more CPUs, which is really important. I ran at 61. Are you buying more fastly? No. Again, this was a very small speculative trade position for me. So at this point, average is 24. Just leave it. And I have to go through the quarter too and see if there's anything there. Jason also, Jason really likes this one. He had calls on this, but he also didn't love the guidance. And so, there's some names you don't full port or size up a heavy position if you're interested in them. Some names that are just small. And so when they fall, because inevitably names will fall, you don't really feel the pain of it. There's other names like a Palantir, when that falls, that hurts pretty badly. But this is obviously, I think, a much more high quality software name. Salesforce almost 190 as it's trying to make its bid up, and then Micron almost 680. Would you be a buyer of GameStop at these levels? I think I'd only be a buyer of GameStop as a trade at these levels on momentum. I mean, Ryan Cohen got banned from eBay yesterday after he made an eBay account and he tried to sell stuff on eBay, and then eBay suspended him from eBay. And now he's talking a lot of shit about eBay. He's like, no one even works there. They don't buy back their stock, yada. Like, he's putting out a lot of tweets to try to compel people to realize eBay should be acquired, which is probably why eBay suspended him. But the acquisition, I feel like, could be bullish in the context of a short-term momentum, because I don't think, at least right now, that acquisition would mean GameStop goes to the moon. Like, they would have a lot of operational stuff to prove to make that acquisition make sense. I wonder if Michael Burry gets back in, though, because he got out. But if the acquisition happens, maybe he says, you know what, I actually like it. Apple, 290.7. 290.7. What is he selling on eBay? He's literally selling video games, ironically. Nabius goes green. These dips aren't lasting longer than an hour on the semi names. They're just not. I mean, you think it's a dip, and it just ends up. I mean, even SanDisk, it's getting ready to flip. It was down 4, now it's down 1.8. Ethereum, is that still down? Ethereum is down 0.38 as well. CoreWeave is also still red, but went green. Reuters, Iran and Washington have lowered ambitions for reaching a comprehensive settlement on the nuclear program and the fate of highly enriched uranium. Yeah, that's obvious. Trump, I don't think Trump cares anymore. I think Trump wants to get to the midterms and keep the economy pumping. I think he will settle. He will definitely frame it as a massive deal, but I think he's going to settle for whatever he can get and just move on. And maybe that'll be the end of this, if that is correct. I mean, if they really care about getting the best nuclear deal they can, then Iran's just not going to agree. They're going to be in a stalemate again for the coming months. So at some point, both sides are going to have to agree. Broadcom, 423. Stock Talk will be on at 11. Jose will be on in about 2 minutes. Oil continues to go down, 90.3. Dude, even with some of these headlines, oil's down. Are the Qs actually at 700? Oh my goodness. I feel like I didn't even realize 700 was close. Like, I feel like this was like 670 or 650, which it probably was last week. Yeah, it was. That's crazy, dude. 700 on the NASDAQ. S&P as well, 700. My goodness. I didn't even realize a 7 handle was that close. Why is Target down 4%? I do not know. They didn't have earnings. But Target's getting hit here. At what point is not having a pullback not healthy? This market is becoming annoying. I saw a tweet yesterday that I think kind of sums up the sentiment. If you're in semis, you're wondering when to trim. If you're not in semis, you're wondering when to get in. And so it's like this duality of, okay, I'm over leveraged on Micron, I need to take profits. And then there's this, I'm not in Micron, I need to get in, which you are looking for an entry, but that entry is like $30 away. Even Jason yesterday, he said his entry on Micron would be like 570. So you need a $100 pullback, which is not easy to get. It's more than 10%. And you might not have buyers willing to give you that pullback unless there's a catalyst that gets you there. So I don't think pullbacks necessarily have to happen to prove the market's healthy. Pullbacks obviously are very healthy, but we also were depressed for 2 months straight. Like 2 months straight, it was just blood every other day. And I say every other day because we had 1 day in between of a little recovery, and then the next day we went red. So now it's green every other day. Technically every day, to be honest. And maybe that tops out at some point, but I feel like there also has to be a catalyst to get there. But I can understand the concerns of like, hey, it's too much too quick. Like, I get it. Like it feels like that. But maybe it doesn't necessarily have to stop as easily. And again, for names that go up, and NVIDIA went from 218 to 195, now back to 212. I guess those were your opportunities. Amit, I don't think we deserve this rally. I think the earnings growth is enough to say you deserve it. Like, again, we talked about all the reasons why the rally happening in the midst of oil and the 10-year and Japanese bond yields and the carry-yen trade and all that, and the war obviously has been hard to fathom, which for everyone, I think that's been the case. But I think the earnings are the simple reason why the market deserves to go up. Now, the velocity of the increase can be in question, but the earnings themselves, I think, are a very simple reason. Doesn't have to be overcomplicated. Also, we went through hell for 2 months, dude. Like, we went through literal, like, it was not fun waking up every morning and be like, wow, market's red again. Here's why. Let's analyze every syllable that Trump and Iran are speaking to try to dissect why the market is red. ARM down 7%. By the way, do you guys know who's leading the prediction markets to be the president in 2028? It's this guy who answered this question yesterday at the press briefing.
At a time such as this?
My hope for America?
And how
the
do you
same as always
personally
been.
deal with that?
Yeah, look, I mean, my hope for America is what it's always been. I think it's the hope I hope we all share. We want it to continue to be the place where anyone from anywhere can achieve anything, where you're not limited by the circumstances of your birth, by the color of your skin, by your ethnicity, but frankly, it's a place where you are able to overcome challenges and achieve your full potential. I think that should be the goal of every country in the world, frankly. But I think in the US, we're not perfect. Our history is not one of perfection, but it's still better than anybody else's history. And ours is a story of perpetual improvement. Each generation has left the next generation of Americans freer, more prosperous, safer, and that is our goal as well. But it is a unique and exceptional country. And as we come upon this 250-year anniversary, I think we have a lot to learn and be proud of in our history. It is one of perpetual and continuous improvement, where each generation has done its part to bring us closer to fulfilling the vision that the founders of this country had upon its founding. So thank you.
Pretty damn good answer. He is now number one to potentially be the president in 2028. Let's bring someone onto the show that also has been giving us some good answers every time we had questions around the semiconductor revolution. Ladies and gentlemen, on a beautiful Thursday morning, Jose.
Good morning. Good morning. How's it going, man?
Are you still on vacation or are you home?
No, I'm back home, back on work mode, grind mode. If you guys believe that.
Well, you were grinding. You did AMD earnings with us even on vacation, so you were grinding. Dude, before we get into the specific stocks, what is your take on just, you cover this sector literally for a living? I mean, for the past 5 years, you have dedicated your channel to the semiconductors. How have you felt about SMH being up 50% over the past 5 months?
I mean, just exciting. It's just an exciting time for the AI ecosystem. I mean, it's happy. I'm just overall happy, right? I mean, just one of my things is, if you don't even own semiconductor stocks, I've always pushed on a semiconductor ETF. There's plenty of information that showcases the semiconductor ETF has outperformed the Qs and the S&P 500 and a lot of indexes, just because this is an industry that, if human innovation continues, semiconductors are going to lead that race. So pretty exciting, right? I'm happy. Obviously, it's not a straight line, like you mentioned. There's some months where it's like, oh man, I got to post another video. I got to do another video. And it's like the comments are going to hate it, right? Because it's like the market just sucks sometimes. But that's the game we're in, right? It's sometimes it's extremely bad, but as long as we keep grinding it out, we'll be able to enjoy and days like we've seen this past week alone. AMD at 420 is crazy. NVIDIA up 2% last time I checked is crazy, right? So yeah, pretty good.
Okay, so let's get into AMD. Why do you think this is getting the re-rating that it's getting? Do you think it's justified? And I mean, are you a buyer at these levels, or do you think people who aren't in the AMD story should feel the risk reward at 420 is worth it?
Yeah, so I'm definitely not a buyer at 420, but mainly, again, this is a company we've been buying over time. I've been buying over time, so it's like I'm happy with my position sizing. It's more about allocation. If I didn't have, let's say, I didn't have a composition, it would be very small dollar cost average. I mean, I do believe the future for AMD is $1 trillion company or plus. I just don't expect it to be a straight line, right? I don't expect it to be a straight line. um, in this AI cycle, there's uh, so much volatility based on news, based on rumors, that could create a downtrend. So it's more like dollar cost average until things improve, or until we get like a better, a random story to really go a little bit more heavy on. Um, Now, in regards to earnings, I think there were two things that really jumped out to analysts. The first is the confirmation. And am I lagging by any chance, or is everything okay on my end?
It's a little bit of a small lag, like your voice is going in and out a little bit, but I don't know if it's internet or.
Yeah, it was just weird because let me just turn off.
Yeah, if you want to
Mm,
rejoin it, that's totally fine.
yeah, let me just rejoin really quickly.
Okay, cool. All right, we'll get him back in a bit. AMD slightly red on the day, but was green just for a second. Again, you got oil right here still taking a nice haircut, which hopefully that continues, but I think that's what's pushing some of these semi names to flip green along with NVIDIA. Is the Dario connection? That's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, I think you're good.
All right, hopefully I'm better here.
So CPUs,
and
she
yeah, for
Lisa confirmed it's legit, basically.
Yeah, 100%. We've been hearing this story for the past 6 months. I think that's what we got this week was the confirmation, right? We heard it from Lee Bhutan maybe like 3 weeks ago. We've actually been hearing this CPU shortage for almost 5, 6 months already. We heard it in December when Intel was already kind of cutting. They give you little hints. And this is why I think for retail investors, Amit, listening to earnings call is very, very important. I think you get a lot of alpha, even if you don't own the company. Intel, I think December or November, they were talking about how they were giving away client wafers or client, pretty much inventory from the client side, the consumer side, and pushing it to the data center side because they were seeing crazy demand. Right. The market is going crazy right now on the CPU storage. But if you've been listening to a lot of these earnings calls, you saw it coming. You 100% saw it coming. So for retail investors, I know sometimes it's like, oh, we don't have an edge because we don't have these crazy tools. We don't have these crazy Bloomberg or whatever. Earnings call, I think, is so underappreciated. You can get a lot of information from there. So Lisa Su kind of gave us more clarity on that this quarter, saying that the shortage is longer than most expected. And the other thing that I think she gave us more clarity on was the AI chip market for them, the GPU space. They mentioned they had bigger, they're seeing better initial reaction to their chips and probably potentially more multi-gigawatt deals coming in the future. So she gave us two great answers about the CPU and the GPU space that I think it's like, okay, this is the story. This is the AI story for AMD right now.
Do you believe in this CPU story like yourself? And do you think agentic inference really is what gives the level of demand for Lisa, for Lip, for ARM to get a fundamental re-rating like NVIDIA did in 2023? Or is it kind of just the street agreeing to it, but the street doesn't know if it's really going to be the type of growth that NVIDIA had 3 years ago?
I think from where we're at right now, it's definitely a real story. I believe it. But that's the crazy thing about semiconductors and AI. You can switch the story. The story can switch or flip out of nowhere. So that's why you have to kind of keep up to date with it. Right now, we had a lot of confirmation. I mean, Amazon during their annual shareholder letter mentioned that two customers wanted to buy all their CPU for the foreseeable future. And right, just at CES in January, kind of built up a CPU only standalone system for NVIDIA to be doing something, they must be seeing something. So I think there's just enough confirmation and evidence from a lot of different companies, right? It's not just Intel, it's not just AMD, but you have a lot of confirmation from companies like Amazon, like NVIDIA, that do give the probability of the CPU shortage lasting a while to be extremely true.
Okay, let's talk ARM because they're down on the day. Did you go to the quarter, and do you think the CEO kind of said what he needs to say about CPUs like Lisa Su did?
Unfortunately, I think their call was last night while I was in travel, so I haven't seen much about it. But I'll definitely do some more, and if anything, I'll pass some information to you that maybe you can share to your viewers later.
Are you long ARM?
I don't own ARM. No.
Okay, got it.
But let me just say,
go ahead.
CPU shortage would definitely be beneficial for them because every kind of big player, right? Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Meta, all have a CPU, and that CPU that they've designed is based on ARM architecture. So it's like Graviton, if they buy more, that's more licensing for ARM. The only thing I would say is kind of my fear with Qualcomm and ARM similarly is they both are also very focused on the consumer space CPU. So it's like, is the data center side enough to push the consumer side away from them, or the headwind from the consumer side? For Qualcomm, the answer seems to be yes, right? We see the stock go up dramatically, but that's kind of like I wouldn't say not a reason to buy, but one of the things to kind of consider before buying. One of the risks is like how much of the consumer space is a headwind based on the data center tailwinds.
So that gets into the conversation around Qualcomm, which also has consumer CPU products. Street's now thinking it might be data center CPUs. Do you think Qualcomm, I mean, it's up from 130. Do you think that's like a serious CPU player, or this is more of a people just hyping into it because it's the semiconductor name that hasn't run yet?
I mean, I wouldn't consider it like a pure YOLO play, right? It's not like the story is definitely there. Qualcomm is really good with CPUs in the consumer side. They've been doing it for a long time. I mean, the Snapdragon on the PC has been moving along, and obviously on the mobile space. So there's evidence that they're good and they can produce something in the server side. So at least there's some evidence to back it up. I think the biggest opportunity here is the CPU shortage. The CPU shortage, if you need more CPUs, you tend to look at anywhere. So that becomes kind of like that nice tailwind for Qualcomm. The other thing is, I don't know if many people remember when NVIDIA started to let people connect their custom CPUs to NVIDIA's GPUs. Qualcomm is one of those partners, right? Qualcomm is going to make a CPU that they're going to connect with NVIDIA's GPUs. They're also kind of doing their own AI GPUs. So if you're going to partner up with NVIDIA, right? If NVIDIA is going to mention you as a partner as well, I think it also kind of gives some evidence that the server CPU play is not a zero probability. I wouldn't know if I would consider it 100 probability, but it's definitely not zero.
Do you think the chip rally has been too much too fast? And how do you think about buying more here? I mean, we heard Dario say they're growing 80x. Goldman says agentic token compute demand could be 12x by 2030. Obviously, these names have had a massive rally, but I'm assuming, you've been talking about this rally for 5 years now that it's coming. But for the people that want to continue piling in, or for the people that don't even want to sell and pay the taxes and want to, continue believing that this rally continues, is your assumption that this build out is another decade long, and it just means the Microns, the SanDisks, the Amcors, the Qualcomms, they have a lot more coming for them?
Yeah. So it's a fun place. It's a funny place to be, right? Because I am bullish long term, but I wouldn't be a net buyer right now, right? If I was a buyer, it would be like small dollar cost average positions to maybe remove some of the FOMO if I had FOMO. Right on some of these names, I like to dollar cost average. Sometimes it helps eliminate. But I think the AI build out is extremely early. Some valuations might be in the short term. In the long term, I still believe in this ecosystem. So for me, for one, tax purposes, I'm definitely not selling a lot of my portfolio. But I would be looking more at companies like Meta. I think Meta has given us uh, there's certain names that have given us opportunities to buy that can benefit from the AI chip race and the AI race in general.
Yeah, I would think that's fair. And again, I think the FOMO is also one of those things where, people are trying to navigate it, but they're also saying these stocks go up 2 to 3% every day, which just makes it hard to continue navigating. Jose's Twitter, guys, I'm linking that right there. You guys can follow him there. Also linking his YouTube. Jose, we got to talk about it. Micron SanDisk, is the thesis still the same that memory is important, but just not something you can easily buy into?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's not right. I mean, I got into other names like Simo, Silicon Motion. That one's up 100% in the past month or so. Um, I talked about it. Risk reward. It doesn't mean the stock prices. I don't. It's not that I believe stock prices will drop. It's just I don't feel comfortable putting my hard-earned money at these types of valuations, right? Because it's money I work hard for, and I want that the probability of it to be successful a lot higher. But the memory story is the memory story is going to last a while, right? We see the shortage going to continue to last. Lisa Su talked about it. We're going to most likely hear about it from Nvidia when they report earnings. But the CPU store, the memory storage, the memory shortage is going to last a while.
If it is going to last a while, do you think the re-rating on the PEs continue, or do you think eventually the street just says, we know it's going to last a couple of years, but we know it's not going to last 10 years, like AMD, which could last 10 years in terms of MI 450s and chips beyond that. So that's why we're just not going to extend the forward multiple on them.
I think there has to be a re-rating because these have become less cyclical due to competition, right? So I think historically they used to trade at very low single digits, but I don't think we're going to get the re-rating to like those 20s that we see a lot of big tech and semiconductor companies in, right? So, I mean, for a lot of investors with Micron, even if it goes to a forward P ratio of 10, it can still be beneficial for them, right? Because I think the forward P is still like 4. I just don't know if we would see the typical tech, probably better than a typical memory space, but not as big as kind of the big tech space right now.
CoreWeave got earnings today. What are you expecting going into this one?
Just a lot about AI build out. I want to see CapEx, what they're doing with CapEx, active power, right? What's their new active power? I think we're going to be over a gigawatt for CoreWeave, which is crazy. I don't think anyone is close to a gigawatt in the neo cloud space of active power. So I'm going to be listening to the call. Hopefully I'll be streaming it too.
So, okay, CoreWeave, you're bullish on. Nebius has obviously had a good run as well over the past couple of days. This XAI Anthropic news, what was your take on Elon basically giving up his excess compute? Is it bearish in any way, or is it more so Grok is just not having a ton of demand and it's bullish Anthropic?
Yeah, so that's how I saw it. I saw a bearish Grok because if you need, everybody's getting a lot of compute, right? And Anthropic has signed a lot of deals. Why isn't Grok doing the same? It means they probably don't have the demand right now for it. So I, at the moment, it does seem a lot more bearish. Grok, bullish, Anthropic. For neo cloud players, I wouldn't be worried about. It's just there's not enough compute to go around, right? Anthropic just signed a massive deal with CoreWeave, but they still need more. It just showcases that even though they need more, not one player can give it all, right? It's there's not enough compute.
How do you feel, Jose, about co-packaged optics and photonics? As that has been the next big sector that's obviously taken off. AXTI, AAOI, AITX today, or AIMX. You're just seeing a big run in these very small sub $2 billion companies that gets re-rated for substrates and 1.6T technology. So how are you thinking of overall optics right now?
Yeah, so it's it's a part we're doing research on, and a quick plug to the community what the chip happened. I mean, we were talking about HiMax. We did a live stream on that a few weeks ago, doing a deep dive on HiMax. It's a market, at least for the smaller players, that we're doing research on. On the bigger names, I tend to invest in the optics space right now through Marvell, which did a few acquisitions to help out their optics play. Credo and Astera Labs are other plays that I've gone in the networking side that are also kind of doing few acquisitions to help out optics in networking space. So that's where my top line, my knowledge is kind of focused on right now on those names. But we're doing research on those smaller names as well.
So you're more, you also like the bigger names, I would imagine, because it's way safer to get a Marvell versus like a billion-dollar company, even if it's not going to run 200%.
Yeah, and it's not like super big. Like, for example, Credo and Astera Labs, they were like at 20 billion. So it's not like I'm looking for $100 billion companies, and I don't mind sub 10 billions, right? Like, I own Air Test System before it was even a billy. Market cap doesn't worry me too much. It's more of just distribution on the portfolio. I would be a lot more kind of conservative on the small micro cap. I tend to be a little bit more aggressive if they're about 10 billion or more. So in the optics space, like I mentioned, Marvell, Credo, and A-Lab are ones that are doing either acquisitions or playing in this game right now.
Lumentum and Coherent, they had earnings recently, both down 5 or 6%. Jensen invested in these. These are 70 billion, but also in the photonic space. Do you think there's something to be said about those, or they've also had a very big run?
I mean, I think if Jensen is investing in them, there's something to look into, right? He's and I think the market isn't completely pricing into them just yet. There's just so much here in the optics, in the fiber, in the semiconductor, that I haven't done my due diligence on Light or Coherent just yet.
Okay. Stu, a little bit of rapid fire with Jose. If you have a ticker, put in the chat. We'll get his quick thoughts on it. I'm linking his newsletter, What the Chip Happened. It was really funny on the AMD call. Neil said, well, Jose's just goes on vacation because the chip happened. So
that was good. Neil's a funny man.
It did happen, dude. SMH is up 50% this year. Like, it happened. The chip happened. But hopefully there's more to go. All right, some quick rapid fire. Iran earnings today. What are you feeling about that one?
I mean, just bullish overall, Neil, right? So that's the story. They have a lot of, they made that acquisition, which is interesting. So they're becoming a little bit more of an AI, not just PowerShell, not just bare metal. I think that acquisition is actually a smart move for Iran.
Okay. Would you expect a deal today or no? Not on the earnings.
I don't know. I mean, they have a massive deal with Microsoft. I think for them, it's better to just make sure that it gets built out and start collecting that massive revenue from them. But some market commentary on hey, we have more deals coming. At least commentary from there, I think would be better. But I mean, the massive power that they need to subscribe to Microsoft, I think just focus on that, showcase to your customer, I can do it. I can make these massive data centers for you and be extremely easy. I think that would be the better long-term story for Iran.
Navitas, thoughts on this one?
I mean, we're seeing a run in the semiconductor play right now, right? I mean, Navitas is up, on semiconductor is up. Again, I think for a lot of these, the story is there. So they have to execute for that story.
Oracle.
Oracle is actually looking a little bit more attractive to me. There's times when I know Oracle was cheaper, much cheaper before. But during that time, other stocks were also cheaper. Now it's a time where a lot of stocks rallied, and I'm looking at what names haven't rallied as much. I think I would put Oracle on my watch list right now.
Yeah, I also think, I mean, this is your best OpenAI proxy, to be honest, outside of Microsoft. Mm-hmm. So being bullish OpenAI definitely helps. Are you in Arista, ANET?
No, definitely. I was going to say definitely not, but no, not for any reason. I know the networking side gets punished a lot after earnings due to competition in the space.
Yeah.
But the company seems to deliver a lot. They do seem to deliver, and earnings usually seems to punish them. But then you see a nice reversal on this one. So I saw it drop. This is one on my watch list to do research on right now.
SMCI, I know you haven't liked it, but any faith in those earnings to get you back in?
Yeah, so it's the reason I don't like it is more just leadership, right? It's leadership. I always find the guy to be very which obviously they need to, but and just the server business is not a business I'm into. But with the demand of AI servers, obviously I think this is one that can play out. If you can improve margins, and if you can provide more solutions to that will help grow margins, I think this seems like a smart play. I just don't like that story, right?
What do you think the Cerebras IPO will do to NVIDIA? I think is a good question.
I think the market will punish NVIDIA in the short term, thinking that it's a or market, not an and market. Cerebras has like a partnership with OpenAI, and they're going to see, oh, another competitor here against NVIDIA. But and NVIDIA's just going to dominate. It's crazy how just because other stocks are rallying, we think NVIDIA's losing its technology innovation. And I don't think that's the case. NVIDIA is the monster.
All right, last couple. DRAM, I would imagine Jose would say he's not into because it's mainly just memory names, but obviously that one's done well. The Corning deal with NVIDIA yesterday, I know you know about this one, but has this one been on the watch list for a while for you?
I have to look. Like I mentioned, yesterday, unfortunately, was travel day for me. So that came out during travel day. I haven't done some information on it. I would love to see how this is different from Light and the other one it made a contract with, I forget, a few months ago. Like, how is this different from the other players? Would be my first thing, because it then helps me understand where some of these bottlenecks continue to lie.
You looked at Nokia at all?
Definitely not. Has this one turned around recently?
Yeah.
Is this an AI data center play?
Jensen bought some of it.
Oh, they did. Yes, they did for AI RAM, but not RAM data center. Like I think it's for networking solutions. I haven't looked at it.
Okay, last one. Bloom Energy.
I mean, this is behind the meter, right? Do they have behind the meter stuff solutions? I mean, we're seeing that BTM stuff get a lot of thing. The only one I own in this space is Solaris Energy. So Solaris Energy helps with that. That market is definitely pushing right now. We're seeing a lot of these AI data centers can't come up unless they have an outside solution outside of just the typical infrastructure. So I don't know what the stock price is doing, but the story is for BTMs. It's fuel cell, but isn't fuel cells? I know people saying fuel cells, but I thought fuel cells was for BTM as well. Right. So I think that story.
No, 100%. BTMs, I'm reading right here, behind the meter fuel cells are on-site electrochemical power generations. I don't know exactly what Bloom's relationship with that is, but the other reason I'm asking is just because energy is the biggest bottleneck we are hearing more and more. So I wonder if that's like a big part of how you're thinking of it, or you'd rather just buy the chip stocks inside of the data centers versus the bottlenecks of energy.
You know, if I had like 5 more clones of me, I would be looking at all these bottlenecks, because I do believe all these bottlenecks have opportunities, right? The power, the behind the meter, the optics plays, the memories plays. All these do have a lot of opportunities, maybe not with the core players, but there's something inside of them that many people aren't looking. So I think that's where people should really focus on. If you have time, if you enjoy learning about behind the meter, obviously it's cool to learn about Bloom Energy, but who else is there? Like, what supply chain can you benefit from there? Who are some of the smaller names that can benefit from this? Is there a special equipment? Is there a special material that you need? Like, I think if you have time and enjoy it, all these shortages has still room to run, but maybe not in the main play. Right. Inside of them, there's something good. So I wish I had more. I got to work on some more AI agents. Is what I think I need to do.
I love it. Jose, thank you. What the chip happened. It should be pretty exciting for you right now, given this is the industry that you cover day in and day out. Everyone can subscribe to that newsletter right there. And we will talk to you next Thursday.
Take care.
Thanks, Jose. Appreciate it. Later. All right. Well, that was our chip discussion. Jose will basically be on every Thursday. So Thursdays, 10:30, 11. We can expect Jose to be on. Stock Talk just text me. He'll be on in about 10 minutes. And then we will get his take on what's going on in the broader market. Few picks of his that have been really starting to make a nice little move right here. Viavi, this is one we did a Equity Edge episode on a while ago. Obviously, Amcor, a lot of people know that. He pitched it on the show. Viavi made a hell of a move on their earnings, up about 15%. OSS, just a massive, massive move yesterday, down a little bit on the day, but from 10 to 15. And a few more that I think he's looking at that we will talk about here today. Is AMD getting a dump? AMD, all right, 2%. This one's kind of been oscillating around 400 to 415. SPY's pumping, though. SPY's pumping. SPY's 736, even though the semi stocks are down. Let me pull up the heat map. Nvidia and Apple, I guess, along with Microsoft, are giving the SPY the pump. Everything else going down. SanDisk, that was down 2. That is now down 4. So SanDisk tried to recover to 1400, didn't get to. Heat maps down. Stock draft, let's pull that up. What happened to my portfolio today on this one? 49%. Oh, Apple. I forgot Apple. Okay, so if all goes well, I think we're gonna win this one. Matt's at 36, Tanner's at 12. The fact that Steve's at 30 on one name is crazy. I mean, Micron just leading it. 30% is 30% is a great return. Beats the S&P. That one name, Broadcom helping, but that one name did it. And then Chris at 20. So right now it's me, Matt, Steve, Chris, and then Tanner that we have right here. This is kind of crazy, dude. 180% drawdown, 2 almost 300% moves. Tesla's also helping today. I have Tesla. Hood and Pounter giving me nothing. Grab giving me a negative 17%. Visa giving me negative 8. And then Apple, which I almost traded at 47. It's pretty wild. We will do the draft again. And we will have some ideas. Also, let me ask you guys a question, because this is something that I've been thinking about over the past couple of days, given the nature of this massive semiconductor rally, and I'm curious if people will be interested in it. So I've been already starting to do a lot of this research on my own, and I kind of want to have like a running document that's open sourced that anyone can access at any time for free. Would people be interested if I broke through multiple sections, and I'll probably like color code it to make it like pretty, every single stock that is relevant to the AI data center and chip build out, AKA not just your Microns, we all know that, but your Sterling infrastructure, which I found out about 2 days ago. That thing is, it went up 45% of the day. I am sure there's a lot of other companies that are like Sterling. I don't think all those companies are going to go up 45% of the day. But if we were to find literally every competitor to Sterling and then put their market cap, their PE, their year-to-date performance, and then like a 2-sentence summary of what they do and why they're relevant inside of that context, and make like a gigantic file of that, which again, I've kind of already been working on over the past, really I started on Saturday. So started end of last week. Okay, I see the chat. People would like that. Because, dude, at this point, it's becoming kind of obvious to me that if this revolution is going to last for way longer than we're expecting, the alpha is probably not in Micron anymore, even though Micron could still pump as Micron goes right on the day. But the alpha is going to be in a much smaller name that is adjacent to a Micron or memory. And quite frankly, it's not that original of an idea, right? The smaller names have been the ones that have been pumping this year. It's just listing all of them out and finding them. They've been these opaque names that's been hard to discover, simply because, I mean, how many people knew what Sterling infrastructure, how many people even knew what Bloom Energy was? Now, this one, Chris Camillo has talked about it a while, but still, this was rather under the radar when it came to fuel cell technology. And so, or air test systems, yeah. I mean, I know Roy was talking about this, but this was as Jose said, sub 1 billion. Now it's 3 billion. Now, I don't know if air test systems is something you hold on to for the next 10 years. I think this document would not be a document of investments. This document would really be a document of trades that maybe could turn into investments. I don't even know if Roy or Jose want to hold air test systems, as long as they want to hold a Meta. But the point is, if all the money from the CapEx is going from Meta to an air test systems right now, or indirectly, then probably even knowing what those tickers are important. Okay, cool. People like it. All right, so that'll be out on Monday. I've already started working on it. I've already got like 45 tickers, to be honest. And I think, to be honest, it's probably going to be filled with like 100 to 150 tickers. Again, not all those stickers are going to be fantastic companies or amazing technologies or, important names in the semiconductor revolution, but they're all adjacent to it. And I think the ones that get the most buzz, we can find a way to make it interactive. Those are the ones that we spend more time doing due diligence on. And let's see if we can find a lot more of these names. And even if we take a flyer on it, you don't have to full port some of these small $500 million companies, but if you take a flyer on it and they end up reporting massive earnings and you see the trajectory of growth, then you can double down. And AppLovin trying to go to 500, that one finally flipping green with software. That one I think would also be kind of effective. Is Grindr on it? No, but Sniffies or whatever, the new app that they announced, that might be on it. Don't put Duolingo on it. Duolingo is the existential way to understand all the languages in the semiconductor ecosystem. So I don't know what you mean by not putting Duolingo on this. All right, cool. That'll be out on Monday. I'll finish working up on that over the weekend. Hopefully that is one that will, as a community, allow us to find a lot more of these smaller names that are there. Because again, it's hard to buy SanDisk here, even if there's more alpha, but there's probably a much smaller version of SanDisk, even if it's not going to go up 40x. That is out there. Did Elon just make an announcement? Did Elon just say something? No, Elon is just retweeted an AI picture. No, we're good. Elon's good. Someone said Elon Musk dissolved XAI. I don't, I mean, technically XAI already was bought out, so it's not dissolved. He did tweet this picture though. This is actually I haven't been through Elon's. I had Elon's notifications on 8 months ago and I couldn't handle it anymore. I had to delete it. I was just like, dude, I cannot take these many tweets. Like this guy tweets 1 billion times a day and he retweets 1 billion times a day. The caption was orbital data centers. There you go. Airlines pumping, AAL, American Airlines. Yup, you're getting a little bit of a pump. United Airlines, that's getting a pump, 3%. And JetBlue, that's also getting a pump, 4%. I think he's using a bot. There's no way he has so much time. I think Elon legit, when he gets 5 minutes to himself, he probably just goes on X and retweets everything and responds to everything. It's kind of crazy how much time in his day is occupied by building multiple big companies, but it's why he is Elon. Boeing CEO will join Trump on China visit next week. Huh. The Boeing CEO, that's an interesting one. Going with Trump to China. I wonder exactly the reasoning for that. But we're going to see what happens there. NY Fed, they just put out some stuff. Let's see what they have to say as well.
Unchanged, but they remain at a somewhat elevated level. The 1 year up 0.2 to 3.6%. It's the highest level since, yeah, you guessed it, April 25 Liberation Day tariffs pushed up the 1 year. 3 year, 3.1, 5 year, 3%. It's those two latter ones that the Fed pays more attention to, at least the Powell Fed did. We'll find out about the Warsh Fed. But those are a little bit on the high side. Expectations for food prices, medical care, college, and rent actually fell. We'll talk about gas in just a second. Expectations for higher unemployment up 0.4 to 43.9%. That's the highest since April 2025. Again, probability of losing a job also on increased to 0.2 percentage points to 14.6. And household spending expectations, they're at the highest level since July 2023. And people aren't worried about missing a debt payment. That's down to the lowest level in 2 years. Now, gas price growth expectations dropped sharply from 9.4% in March to 5.1% this month. New York Fed, in a separate survey, found that the wealthiest household, they boosted their spending to match the increase in prices, but they kept their gas consumption the same. Low-income families cut back on their gas consumption to meet ends meet. They were hit harder in March than they were from the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine. Sarah, I'm sure you're following all these consumer-facing companies and what they're saying, and some of them aren't seeing anything at all when it comes to the consumer, and others, like, for example, the Whirlpool commentary today, kind of eyebrow raising.
Right. No, we highlighted that. That was a weak one. There were a few weak ones today. Kraft Heinz and McDonald's talked about weakness. Steve, assuming Kevin Warsh still wants to cut, and again, we don't know at this point how he feels since the war, but it's going to be tough in this environment to do that.
Yeah, I'm not going to bet against Paul Tudor Jones and what he said on air this morning. You guys heard that. There's no way he can cut. And then he also added that he'd be thinking about raising rates. Guys, this gets to this really fascinating discussion about what impact AI has on inflation and on interest rates. What Paul Tudor Jones is talking about, something we've talked about a lot, which is that all of this borrowing together with the federal government borrowing puts upward pressure. It's a very simple concept. The demand for capital has increased, so the price of capital goes up, at least initially, and the productivity is to come. And when we saw the decline in productivity today, even though it remains high, it's a cautionary tale for Kevin Warsh. Say, don't necessarily bank right now on those productivity increases.
Meantime, now again, I think that's also why the 10-year has been elevated. There are still some concerns on if inflation will ring up the way that it did in 2021. After 2020, it seemed like we could have no inflation, and then it ended up happening. The more oil goes down, hopefully starts to push back against that thesis. But obviously, Kevin Warsh is going to have to decide if he ends up cutting into what he thinks could be rising inflation, or, deciding that inflation is not as big of a concern and maybe keeping rates rather neutral. All right, folks, let's bring someone onto the stream who has been on, I think, about 3 times, a couple times in person, given we were together. Good friend of mine, good mentor of mine. He hit a big milestone yesterday, as I'm sharing on the screen. A lot of you guys follow him on X already, but there's the post right there. 3,000% returns over the past 26 months. And many of those names, a lot of the community has been able to benefit off, like an Amcor, Viavi, OSS. Let's get him onto the show, get his thoughts on the current state of the markets. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Stock. You're live. I don't think he can hear us.
What's going on? I can't hear you.
Did you hear anything over the past 2 minutes?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Why can I not hear you?
This is actually hilarious. This is great.
Hold on.
I'll text him right now. You're live, but you can't hear us. I like the jersey in the background, dude. Stock mute weekly.
I don't know why.
Yeah, I can't.
can't
Okay,
hear you.
rejoin.
Hold on.
Rejoin.
Okay, yeah, let me try to rejoin.
All right. And now we wait. Yeah, stock difficulties versus technical difficulties. Yo, it's kind of weird because Jose also, his thing was lag. He just texted me. He's like, sorry for the lag today. He had some weird lag throughout the day, or throughout his stream. And his mic was kind of going in and out. Maybe it's StreamYard. Maybe it's StreamYard. I'm going to tell him to text me when you're good. Okay. Well, I guess we go back to the market. SPY is kind of red. Not red, but going a little more red. 735. We were at 737. We're not really seeing that much movement, to be honest, from the morning. Micron, once again, red, but it flipped red and green back and forth. Qualcomm getting a little pump. Qualcomm. Oh, wow. That's more than a little bit. Holy crap. Qualcomm's moving. That was at 194. There had to be some news right there that's getting this one up here. Let me see what the news is here. If that's random, that would be kind of crazy. There has to be a headline. I don't see a headline. That might be just whales coming in. 7% move off the lows today, or the high. It was already up 2% at 194. There you go. I don't see a headline, but it should be okay. Let's see if it works now. No. I can also just call them in. You can also just call in. That might be your side. Yeah, I don't know. 206.50, as that's green. Maybe it's just semis, maybe. But the other semis are down. So maybe it's a rotation into other semis. Micron, AMD, Nokia getting hit today hard. BlackBerry, flat basically. Bloom also. This was at 305 the other day. And now it's also down. He doesn't have headphones. I don't think it's a headphone thing. I think it's just where his audio is coming from. Might be StreamYard, to be honest. Might be StreamYard. IGV is also holding strong. That is correct. IGV's. Where's Datadog? Is that one still holding strong? Datadog. Yes, that one's still holding strong. What stock would you full port? The responsible answer is the S&P 500, ticker symbol SPY. The degenerate answer, Max Linear also up 5.2% today. That one's up 300. So, see, again, just like so many of these smaller names, AI adjacent, made a big move. The degenerate answer is the name that you think is going to keep going up, which I feel like any semiconductor name. Not literally. Jason says Cloudflare. Dude, Cloudflare, this whole CDN agents using the web. There's a startup that just raised $100 million that's literally built to build a platform for agents to communicate with each other on the web. The thesis is if there's more agents doing stuff for all of us autonomously, there's going to need to be a new like web experience for those agents. And the ex-Twitter guy, Parag Agrawal, actually raised it's a $2 billion valuation for that company. It's kind of interesting because theoretically you would need a lot of agents or an ecosystem for those agents to communicate with each other. Jason says degen into Snow into earnings. So, Snow is interesting. They've been hit so hard for the past 3 quarters, but they also grew 30%, which means if they put up a Datadog type of quarter and they reaccelerate based on potentially an AI theme, maybe software catches a bit. All right, let's try it again. Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you now. I don't know what's going on.
Okay. We are live. First of all, thank you for being on the show, man. I will reintroduce you since you've been here at the last time. For those that are not following Stock Talk on X, he definitely hit a big milestone yesterday. 3,000% return over the past 26 months, ever since he started sharing his portfolio publicly in 2024. S&P 500, 53% at the same time. Pretty incredible stuff. Very inspiring as someone who considers you a friend and mentor and trying to learn about the art of stock picking, which is not an easy thing to do. You've been in the game for almost 15 years now doing this. It's just impressive. And a lot of our community has also been benefiting from picks like OSS, Amcor, Viavi, so many of those names that have led to that alpha. So thank you for being on the show. Thanks for being here and spreading these picks. And I guess my first question to you, man, is what is your take on the current market environment? A lot of people are saying it's a top. A lot of people are saying .com. A lot of people are saying this is too quick, too fast. given we did have 2 months of, depression, February and March, and now we're breaking out. What is your take on that? And do you think the earnings picture is just fundamentally changing the way the bears should be thinking about the market environment that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think every time we get into a raging bull market, there is a lot of people that want to make allusions to market bubbles of the past. Over my career, I've found that trying to predict crashes is a fool's errand. It's useless for all intents and purposes. I've never met anyone that could do that consistently. And I think even when you think to like people like Michael Burry, for example, who people like to think is this crash predictor aficionado, he predicted one crash and got it right, one cycle. And since then has frankly had a lot of bad calls.
Yeah.
And has been wrong a lot. And I'm not saying I'm a better investor than Michael Burry or Michael Burry's a bad investor. That's not the point I'm making. The point I'm making is that predicting market crashes is literally a fool's errand. It's not something that can be done every cycle consistently over the course of decades. No one ever has been able to do that. No economist, no Wall Street titan, not Paul Tudor Jones, not Stanley Druckenmiller, not Warren Buffett, not Peter Lynch. None of these guys have been able to predict market crashes consistently over their career. So knowing that, I kind of sit comfortably saying, look, I can't predict that. And I won't let that factor into my process. So look, could we be near a market top? Sure. Is the market euphoric? Yeah, it is. Euphoric markets can last a long time, though. Bull markets can last a long time. Has this run in semiconductors been overzealous a bit? Maybe, but the earnings are backing it up, right? These companies are blowing out earnings. Semiconductor companies, especially the mid-cap semiconductor companies, which so many of them have gapped up 30, 40, 50% this earnings season, they're hitting inflection points. They're getting data center orders, hyperscaler orders. These are companies that were forgotten or, had boring businesses for decades. I mean, Amcor, for example, which, I came and talked to you guys here on the show at 24, and I still own it. It's still my second largest position. This company went from, when I talked to you guys about Amcor on the show, had no growth, right? And that was one of the big criticisms. When I remember when I shared it here, we go to the audience questions, people were like, well, it's not growing. Amcor just posted 30% growth in the last quarter, right? So it went from not growing to 30% growth in what, 6 months, right? So, and it's not just Amcor. This has happened with dozens of small semiconductor companies, mid-cap semiconductor companies, right? Amcor went from a 5 billion market cap to an 18 billion market cap, whatever it is now. Viavi, not a semiconductor company, but a testing company, network testing and semi-testing company, photonics testing. These guys, same thing, from 13 that when we got in, now it's a $50 stock. So many of these names, yeah, they've gone up a lot, but the businesses have fundamentally changed. They've returned to growth. Businesses that were not growing are now growing again. They're getting hyperscaler orders. They're getting multi-billion-dollar contracts. And me and Chris Pateo, who I know you've had on the show before, me and him were sort of debating about this on Spaces and Twitter yesterday. And he was like, look, where is the money coming from and where is the money going? That was kind of what the proposition he was putting on the table. And I was like, it's obvious. Did anyone see the Mag 7 earnings, this earnings quarter? I mean, they all smashed EPS estimates, blew them out of the water by multiple dollars, right? I don't remember $10 versus $7, $5 versus $3 expectations. They blew EPS estimates out of the water. And so they're making a lot of money. And then on top of that, they're spending a lot of money. Now, where's that spend going? People are like, where's the ROI? The ROI is going to the real economy, right? You look at power grid players, right? You look at small data center infrastructure providers. You look at companies even like OSS with rugged compute, which just had a monster quarter and went up 60% yesterday.
Yeah.
The money is trickling down. When these guys are spending and I'm not making a political statement here about trickle-down economics, the money is literally trickling down. When the hyperscalers are spending hundreds of billions of dollars, not every single dollar is going to NVIDIA. Yeah, a lot of it is, but not every single dollar is. Tens of billions, even hundreds of billions of that money is going to smaller infrastructure players, electricity providers, hardware, substations, fittings, server racks, all sorts of things that companies of all kinds build. I don't know if anyone saw Sterling Construction the other day, which was up 50% on earnings. That's a construction company. Why were they up 50%? Because they're building data centers. Does this not produce jobs? Does this not produce a demand for materials? That is stimulative to the economy. So people are asking, where's the money going? What is it doing for the real economy today? And my answer is the build out is doing quite a lot for the real economy. It's doing a lot of heavy lifting for the real economy. So are we in a bubble? Depends how you define bubble. But what I would say is, even if we are in a bubble, let's just say for saying's sake that we're in a bubble. How long does it last is the real question, not are we in a bubble? And a lot of the greatest investors of all time will say, when you see a bubble, run to it. You know, run to it and make as much money as possible. Because markets are about, excuse me, markets are about how much money you make in between the crashes.
Right.
That's the whole point.
Because there's always a crash, inevitably.
There's always a crash. Like, anyone who sits down and tells you there's never going to be a crash again, I mean, they're either just trolling you or they're lying to themselves. But there will be crashes. There might be a crash this year, next year, whatever. The question is, how much money do you make between the crashes, and how much do you keep during the crash? That is all that matters, right? And so if there's a bubble, let's just assume there's a bubble in between every crash. You want to be in that bubble, you know? And when the going gets tough, the indices start breaking down, the leaders start falling apart, then you can ask yourself, okay, is the party over? But it's a fool's errand to try to predict when that's going to happen.
Okay, so let's talk about some of the plays you're in versus some of the plays that have gone kind of vertical. I want to start off with the large caps, Micron, SanDisk. Simple question. Would you be buying those here? And similar to the AMDs and the NVIDIAs, I mean, all these names, NVIDIA less to an extent, but all these names that have started to really take off, even though they're not mid caps, is there alpha in buying them here? Or are you afraid that the cyclical nature of these companies is being re-rated to such an extent that SanDisk is up 4,000% in a year?
So I don't own any of the memory plays. I'll be clear about that. Just off rip, we'll go over my portfolio later as well. But as you guys know, I'm a mid cap guy for the most part. So I focus on mid caps that I think can become larger companies. You know, OSS, Amcor, Viavi. I mean, when Amcor and Viavi, when I bought them, were mid caps, and now they're large caps. But when it comes to these large cap memory plays, SanDisk, Micron, etc., I'm not opposed to that thesis, and there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, this is the biggest build out in terms of chip purchasing that we've ever seen, in terms of cadence of chip purchasing. Right? You have the biggest companies in the world all spending hundreds of billions of dollars on basically the same subset of products. That's never happened before. In the dot-com bubble, the focus on infrastructure was very different. It wasn't so chip focused as it is today. It was more telecom infrastructure focused. Now, today's build out, it is, I think, a fairly safe assumption to say, yes, this is going to be a longer cycle than normal, because of the level of spend. So I think cycle extension is a fair argument. And then more importantly than that, those stocks are cheap. Now, and the funny thing is Micron, SanDisk, on a forward basis, these are still cheap.
Yeah.
Even after these enormous runs. Now, the rub lies in this, which is that A, when does the cycle end? Which I don't know. And B, traditionally speaking, if you go back to previous memory cycles, for those who have studied memory cycles in the past, you will see that these stocks are visually very cheap, usually at the end of the cycle. And so that spooked a lot of people, because they're like, oh, well, typically when I see Micron trading at 7 times forward earnings, it's at the end of the cycle. You know, so this time the question is this an extended cycle? And if it is an extended cycle, then how much higher can those names go? And if this cycle, let's say, lasts twice as long as previous cycles, the answer is they can go a lot higher. Now, Is Micron and SanDisk going straight up in a straight line mean that the market's about to crash? Maybe, but I wouldn't put that much credence on it. I think what's happening is that investors, institutional and retail alike, are trying to make their minds up about this. To say, okay, we all agree this is going to be an extended cycle. I mean, at this point, with the way these stocks have run, the market agrees it's going to be an extended cycle. But how far is it going to extend? And how much should these stocks be bid up in light of that? Should they trade at 10 times forward? Should they trade at 15 times forward? So the market is kind of in this pricing moment right now where it's trying to ascertain how expensive these stocks should trade going into the tail end of the cycle. And maybe it's not even the tail end. Maybe it's just halfway through.
Right.
So I'm not opposed to memory thesis. The memory investors out there, I'm not mad at them. I'm like, hey, go for it. I get the game that you're playing. I personally don't have any exposure to those giants, those memory giants. But I'm not mad at the trade, and I understand the rationale behind it. So,
are you afraid that if that trade tops out, a lot of the SMID caps get topped out because CapEx fears top in to an extent?
If the memory trade tops out?
Yeah, like if because it would top out in the context of CapEx going down, I would imagine, or growth of CapEx fears leading up, which might hurt some of the smaller, like an Amcor, if packaging demand potentially goes down if there's less, or you just don't think that's possible given the amount of compute constraints that we have right now.
Yeah, right now I think compute constraints are just too restrictive. The thing is that memory supply takes a long time to bring online.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just snap your fingers overnight. And so that's where the squeeze is really coming from, is people saying, okay, well, it may take years to bring the necessary memory supply online. It may take 2 or 3 years. It may take all the way until the next cycle. So that's something people are thinking about. But when it comes to the mid caps, well, Amcor's not a mid cap anymore. It's a large cap now. But when it comes to some of these derivative plays, right? Packaging, testing, it's more about hyperscaler spend, right? I think the reason why the market ripped so hard these past couple of weeks, and I don't even mean the S&P 500. I mean individual names, names, like our names, right? The reason they went up so much in the last couple of weeks is because the Mag 7 not only had stellar earnings, I thought across the board. I know Meta traded down on theirs and whatever, but I think they all had stellar earnings. They all reiterated their spend. Many of them raised the guide on their spend, right? As long as that continues, I think it's really, really hard to fade this market. I think I mentioned this in a tweet after the Mag 7 earnings. I think the life force of this bull market is the idea that the biggest companies in history, not only the biggest companies in the world, they're the biggest companies in history. These 9 tech juggernauts in America, Broadcom, TSM, not even just in America, around the world, Broadcom, TSM, Amazon, Google, Tesla, Microsoft, they're all making a lot of money. And they're all spending a lot of money, right? That is stimulative, not only to the economy, but it's stimulative to the bottom 80% of tech stocks that live below them, in the ecosystem below them, right? So when the biggest companies in the world are making a lot of money and spending a lot of money, it's hard to fade that, right? It's very, very hard to fade that. So that's what I think the driver is. And I think if you want to fade this market, or you want to call top in this market, that's the first sign you should look for. That's the first sign where I think you should start being cautious, is to say, wait a second, they're slowing their spend down. Wait a second, they're guiding down on their spend. And that hasn't happened yet. So,
You've had a lot of gains this year, and after this, we'll talk about some of the positions that you're the most excited about. But profit taking, midterm year, seasonal weakness before the elections, July, June tend to suck for stocks historically, or especially tech stocks. Like, you have Nebius at 23. I'm assuming you're not thinking of trimming here, but is there a certain level of trimming that you think should happen, not just for you, but for a lot of people that are up this year before we head into some harder months?
Wait, rephrase that.
Would you trim your stocks right here, even after?
No. For me, look, my philosophy on trimming and selling has always been the same, which is that I sell stocks when the thesis breaks. Period. So whenever I buy an individual name, I have a thesis behind it. I have a reason I buy it. And when that thesis starts breaking down, I become a seller of the stock, right? I don't sell before I see real breakdowns in the thesis. And so for me, where we stand today, my thesis is intact on pretty much everything I own. And so as long as that remains true, I just can't bring myself to sell. Now, the exception to that is when I think market conditions are unfavorable, right? And I was talking about this yesterday. I don't predict the macro to determine that. I have a very simple barometer that I've used for over a decade. It's going to sound so rudimentary when I say this, but it really is the best, I think, barometer to use, which is the S&P 500 trading above the 200-day moving average or not? And people say, well, dude, come on, you need more data than that. No, you don't. And I'll tell you why. The S&P 500 is the most owned stock asset on planet Earth. The Saudis own it. The Europeans own it. The Americans own it. The Canadians own it. People in Singapore own it. People in China own it. Everyone owns it. And it's so hyper liquid that I often think the S&P 500 is just your reflection of the market. If the S&P 500 is below the 200-day moving average, you start to be cautious. You start to ask yourself, okay, do I need to have X, Y, and Z positions on the plate or no? Do I need to have these trades, these peripheral positions on the plate? When the S&P 500 is above the 200-day moving average, you're in a bull market. Game on. Dance while the music is playing. I even said this week too. That would be my favorite piece of advice. Whenever people ask me, give me a piece of advice or give me what's your best piece of advice on the market, my best piece of advice on the market is dance while the music is playing. If you're in an obvious bull market, stocks are going up, the S&P 500 is ripping above the 200-day moving average, buy stocks, play the game. And when that's not the case, that's when you kind of take your foot off the pedal, put your hands back and say, okay, let's be patient and wait, or reduce some exposure or get incrementally cautious or put puts on the table or whatever. But you change your attitude when that changes. So I think if you want to use the simplest barometer, you just go to your charts and you say, hey, is the S&P 500 trading above the 200-day moving average? If it is, cool, game on. If not, okay, let me find out why. Let me see if that's a legitimate reason, and let me adjust my portfolio accordingly. So that's what I've always done for years and years and years. And it hasn't failed me yet.
We lost the 200-day moving average in March, but the structural bull markitude was not lost.
No, but I became cautious. I took a little bit of options exposure off the table just to be cautious. I cut a few peripheral positions. It ended up recovering pretty quickly, so I didn't have to spend too long in that cautious attitude. But as soon as we were back above the 200-day, I was like, game on.
Yeah.
I don't wait. My bias is fluid. And this is the thing. A lot of times you see people criticizing people in the market saying, oh, you're a flip-flopper. Or, oh, you were bearish last week, you're bullish this week. That's the whole fucking point. You should flip-flop in markets. Your bias should be fluid. You should be willing to go from bullish to bearish if necessary. And so, yeah, there are moments in the market where I get cautious. Am I bullish 95% of the time? Yeah. I mean, that's the appropriate thing to do. Markets go up about 85% of the time. So am I mostly bullish? Yeah, absolutely. Am I always bullish? No. There are moments where I'm cautious. There are moments where I say, okay, there's good reason for stocks to be selling here. We're below the 200-day. I'm not going to put my foot on the gas.
Right.
Performance is generated when you press the gas at the right moments. When you leverage your exposure at the right moments, when the market's bullish, when it's accommodating environment, you're pushing the gas. You're hitting trades. You're dropping options contracts on your favorite names. You're adding leverage. That's where the performance comes from. It doesn't come from, the weak moments in markets. The weak moments in markets where you kind of just take your hand off the table, take your foot off the gas, and let things settle out.
So let's end it on your portfolio and kind of how you've been thinking about all this. And again, guys, his Twitter is right there, so everyone can make sure to follow him. Discord link is in his chat.
You want me to just do an aerial overview of it?
Yeah, I think an aerial overview and
run through.
Yeah, that would work.
Okay. So, damn, when's the last time I came on? It's been months, right?
I think it was early February. And a
Yeah,
lot of those
so
positions are still the same. I'm sure you added some new ones, but many of
a
them.
lot has changed. Since then, a lot has changed.
Someone said you
Okay,
sound
I'll
like Alex
power
Moses.
through this. So this is as of last week. This is as of my portfolio update as of May 1st. I haven't gone and broken down the weightings as of this week, but I did open 4 new spots this week as well. So
Okay.
I've been opening a lot of positions. I have a lot of new stuff. So, all right. Power grid basket. You guys know ENS is my core position there. I've talked to you guys about that before. That's at about 11% weighting. I think it's a little lower now. After this week, I'll have to go see what the adjustment was. These are all, again, these weightings are all as of last week, guys. These weightings were probably different on the portfolio update I post tomorrow. I know a lot of you are in the community now from midstream. For those of you that are there, you'll see the portfolio update tomorrow when I post it. But this is as of last week. And then PLPC is the second biggest. That's at about 2.8% in that basket. Actually, PLPC was definitely probably overtaken this week by AMSC, I would imagine. American Superconductor, AMSC. That probably overtook PLPC this week. BDC is a new one. Belden, they're a cabling company. They acquired a network services company too on their last earnings. The reaction was negative, but I actually like that acquisition. U.S. Semiconductor Supply Chain. I don't own P-Lab anymore. I mentioned that to you guys last time I was on the stream, but Amcor is still there. That's the only position on the semiconductor basket. So that's a separate basket.
Did you take profits on Amcor at all? People are asking, or no?
Nope.
Wow. Okay. So
nope.
Heavy conviction there.
Conviction. Yeah, heavy conviction. And also, I think the valuation is still reasonable. Now that the company has returned to growth, it's not an expensive stock. You go look at the numbers. It's not an expensive stock. And so I think Amcor is so winner agnostic. They're able to benefit from so many different parts of the industry. Everything from Intel's packaging to Broadcom's custom ASICs to TSM's packaging to Apple's packaging. They're just so exposed that I like to continue to own it. And I have such a deep cost basis advantage as well, so that helps. So that name sits alone in this basket. Then you have data center AI infrastructure basket. That's Viavi is the biggest position there. That's at over 20% of the portfolio now. So that's the biggest weighting in the portfolio by far. Second position in the data center basket is NBIS, obviously, which I've owned since last May. That's now a 7-bagger for me.
People are asking, are you selling Nebius here? Any thoughts on that?
Nope. I think Nebius is the best talent in the industry, the best neocloud stock. I mean, a lot of people forget you're not going to value that company off its revenues. You're not going to go look at the earnings reports and value that company off its revenues. That company needs to be valued off of its backlog and the sum of parts of its subsidiaries, right? They own ClickHouse, which is the biggest data observability platform in the world. OpenAI, SpaceX, both use it. It's a multi-billion-dollar company. They own 30% of it. They own Toloka, a AI data management business that Jeff Bezos invested in. They own AV Ride, which is an autonomous vehicle business that does food delivery in Dallas right here, right outside my house. I get it. Every time I order Uber Eats here, they give me the option to use an AV Ride robot. So they have these multi-billion-dollar subsidiaries. And then they have to the tune of $30+ billion in backlog orders with Microsoft prepaying 40%. So Nebius, I think, is the best team in the industry, best concentration of talent. And then one of the newer ones there is P, which is formerly PSTG, but now the ticker is just P.
Oh, this is...
Yep, Everpure.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's a pure options position, no equity. So all those other names I mentioned were equity. That is just pure options. Then you have robotics and edge AI. Robotics and edge AI. That's OSS is obviously the biggest position. Then you have A new one, this is a speculative one, but it is a pretty big weighting, VLN, Valence Semiconductor. I don't think I've talked to you guys about that one before, but that is a newer ad. Then you have Synaptics, SYNA, which I talked to you guys about, I think last time I was on stream.
Yeah.
Or maybe it was on Equity Edge. I don't remember. But that's one that reports today, after hours, actually. A lot of people were tagging me. They're like, Stock Talk, you lost your touch when Synaptics fell down to the 70s, but now it's back up to 100 plus. So, hey, don't put that.
Sometimes the thesis needs.
Yeah, you need breathing room.
Months, if you know, right?
Yeah, you need some breathing room. People want everything. People are so used to my picks from last year just all ripping right away, and I was like, dude, calm down for a month. Just wait. And so, yeah, it's been doing good. We'll see the earnings tonight. I don't want to jinx it. Maybe the earnings go badly, but I'm not selling that stock, even if the earnings go badly. Then I have VPG in that basket, Vishay Precision Group. They have about 4% of segment revenue coming from humanoids right now, which I think is interesting considering humanoids are a non-existent industry.
So you are starting to prepare potentially for a humanoid robotics supply chain.
Not even humanoid robotics, just robotics.
Okay.
But I think there's a lot of overlap. Like I think a lot of the things needed for general purpose robots are the same things needed for humanoids, Yeah. So, yeah, but that is kind of what I'm looking at. Then I have CTS in that basket. And then another new basket, telecom and voice AI. There I have RDCM as the biggest position. Then I have Lumen, LUMN. Then I have CXDO.
CXDO.
Yes, sir. And CXDO actually reported earnings yesterday. I thought they did a stellar job. I think that is going to be the next Bandwidth, which has been on a crazy run lately. I don't own Band, but it's just that's a comp to Band. They had a monster report yesterday. For those that are interested in CXDO, you should go look at that. Really, the thinking behind this telecom and voice AI basket is that fiber infrastructure and legacy telecom infrastructure is becoming more important for two reasons. Number one, low latency, high speed connections for data center providers. AWS Cloud is interested in this. Oracle Cloud Infrastructure is interested in this. OCI. They both have partnerships with Lumen. CXDO's case, same thing. A lot of voice AI interconnects. So people who want to use automated, voice networks, AI voice networks. This is all for that. So RDCM, extremely cheap company as well. But yeah, anyway, those are all probably worth looking into. Then you have AI fraud and verified identity. That's Matex Systems. I think I've also talked to you guys about that one before.
Yeah, we did an episode on that. Yeah.
Yeah, we did an episode on that one. They report earnings today after hours as well. Looking for traction in their AI fraud business. Then you have nuclear energy. Only one position there. Only ever really planned to have one position. That's LEU. Yep. You're reading my mind. And then defense. I have IRDM. HII. A very, very, very small position in Kratos. Yeah, very small. It's like 0.2% of the portfolio now. And then I also picked up some AV calls yesterday. Reason for that is that I'm speculating that their Locust program will be selected as the military's directed energy weapon.
Okay.
The Department of Defense posted a image that has Locust X3 in the image, and that's their product. And then yesterday they did testing with the DoD. So I think connecting the dots there, that's probably likely to happen. And that's it. Yeah. And then you have the legacy positions, Amazon, Tesla, Robinhood.
So you are not interested in buying more like Google or Shopify or like these companies, 100, 200 billion market cap. That's zero interest for you.
The total weighting on those legacy positions, Amazon, Tesla, Robinhood, is like less than 3% of the portfolio. They've gotten so small. And the reason for that is because I owned them many years ago, first of all, but the portfolio is 32x in 2 years. And so when you own pure equity positions from a long time ago in the portfolio 32Xs, you know what I mean?
Right.
You're going to have a lag. So things we didn't talk about on there are the new positions. Like I mentioned, AVAV calls that I picked up. I picked up a BB calls, BlackBerry calls yesterday.
BlackBerry, interesting.
Yeah, I think their QNX platform, which is used for electric vehicles, it's interconnected to like 100+ million vehicles. I think it's being underrated. I think it's useful as a robotics platform. I wrote a thesis on that in Discord as well. So I picked up those calls yesterday. I picked up R&G earnings lottos. Those aren't really a position. They're just earnings lottos. They report earnings today after hours. Ring Central, another voice AI play. Telecom and voice AI play. They report earnings tonight. So I picked those up.
People asking why sell Kratos?
I didn't sell it. It just it underperformed. A lot of times, guys, when weighting goes down a lot, it's not about me selling the stock. It's about the rest of the portfolio outperforming the stock, right?
Right.
So the relative weighting in the portfolio goes down. So I didn't sell Kratos. It just has sucked. The stock has just sucked. And so the weighting went down a lot. But yeah, I added those calls. Those are all pretty liquid names, so I don't feel bad about sharing those. And there's also one new position that I added yesterday, which I won't share with you guys yet, but maybe next time we're on, I want to give the people in the community a chance to look into it and get it. But there's a very, very compelling AI stock that I found that I think is much, much too cheap. Trades at less than 2 times cash, less than 0.5 times EV over sales, with no debt. So very, very compelling. And I'll probably share that with you guys next time I'm on stream, or maybe next week on Equity Edge. Me and Amit will try to figure out a way to bring Equity Edge back. I was thinking maybe we just do it every week, even if I don't have a stock to pitch, just talk about the market. I don't know. We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
We're both pretty busy, so we'll figure something out.
Yeah, I've been traveling so much the past couple of months, so I mean that's
same.
Part of the reason why. A couple rapid fire questions for you, and then we'll let you go. I can tell you've been working, dude. You're
yeah, dude.
Does he have antivirus?
Yeah, I know.
Okay,
right? Don't believe it. Yeah, I don't want to have antivirus.
Software, dead or alive? Would you buy software at all?
I mean, I own some software. Some of those names I mentioned to you. I mean, Matech Systems is technically software. Ring Central, where I'm playing the earnings tonight, technically software. A lot of those telecom and voice AI plays I brought up to you guys, those are technically software. So there are areas of software that I think are interesting.
But your service now is not something.
No. And here's the thing. I had this argument yesterday on Spaces. Long term, I am bearish on software. Now, the argument you kind of hear is this. You hear, well, software is going to get vibe coded away, right? And then on the other side of the argument, you hear, no, that's not going to happen. No one's going to vibe code CRM. That's not the argument. The argument is not that every software you know will be vibe coded away. The argument is that the ability to build software more easily decreases the pricing power for software. Right? The ability to build software more easily decreases the pricing power for existing software. That's the argument. And I think it's a very, very hard argument to crack. You know, the analogy that I used yesterday was like with a cleaner. I use this example of like a maid who might come to your house and clean your house, right? And she might charge you $500. In a future where, and this has nothing to do with software, this is just an analogy from a different industry. In a future where a humanoid robot could clean your house, even if they can't clean it as well, maybe the humanoid robot sucks at doing dishes, sucks at cleaning the baseboards, can't dust the fan. Does the existence of that option decrease the pricing power of the maid? And the answer is yes.
No.
Because even if you say, you know what, I'm still going to go with the maid because she does the baseboards and can she charge you the same amount? No, because now you have this extremely affordable potential option, right? So put yourself in the shoes of, let's say, a small business who pays an enterprise software company, and I'm saying small as in, let's say they have 500 employees, okay? And they pay a software company per seat, right? They pay them, let's say, $1,000 per seat per year or whatever. I mean, I'm just making up numbers here, okay? $1,000 per seat per year. Then Claude sends a sales guy to them and says, well, we can build you an in-house CRM and we'll do it internally, and we'll just get Claude to do it, and it'll cost you nothing per seat. We'll just charge you a fixed fee. That person, that business owner, may then go to the software company and say, look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to get a custom in-house CRM built. I'd rather keep using you guys, but I'm not going to pay you $1,000 a seat,
right?
Because now there's this alternative that is much cheaper. So it's a twofold problem. A, net seats go down because you're going to have less people working. But more importantly than that, pricing power goes down when something becomes easier to build, right? The easier a house becomes to build, pricing power for houses goes down. The easier a car becomes to build, pricing power for cars goes down, so on and so forth. It rings true economically across all industries. This concept that pricing power is eroded by cheaper competition.
Right.
And that will always be true. And so that's why I worry about software. So in the really long run, do I want to have legacy software companies in my portfolio? No. Is there a trade to be made here? Absolutely. That I'm not going to push back against. I think there's absolutely a trade to be made here. So if you want to trade software off the lows because the multiples are cheap and they're gapping up 20, 30% on earnings, absolutely go for it and do that. I'm not sure that I'm a believer that this will be a great thing to do in the very, very long run, right? In terms of software. So yeah, that's kind of my thinking.
All right. We will end it there. I think you just need some sleep, bro. It feels
Dude,
like
I need some sleep. I'm so
you need some
tired.
freaking sleep. But that's good. It means you're working. It means you're freaking working. So.
Yeah, there's too much money to be made, man. But yeah, no, I'm getting sick. We can hear my voice. But I appreciate you guys. I'll be on whenever Amit has me next, and then we will figure at some point we'll bring you guys another Equity Edge episode, maybe next week on that new stock that I bought, maybe the week after. We'll talk about it. But I appreciate you guys. Thanks for listening.
There's his Twitter. I have his port also linked in the Google Docs. People can click on that, go through the names if they want. Stock Talk. Thank you again, man. Congrats on all the success.
Of course, man. Peace,
I'll
guys.
talk to you next week.
Take it
Later.
easy.
All right. I've got to go because I have a meeting at 12 p.m. So I'll be back on the market close. We've got a lot of freaking earnings. I don't even know how I'm going to cover all of these earnings. Sam will be with me, but we have Coinbase, Rocket Lab, SoundHound, Iran, CoreWeave, Melly, Airbnb, Trade Desk, Cloudflare, OpenDoor, SMR, MP, XYZ, Block, Affirm, DraftKings, Redcat, AAOI, Lyft, Serve, Monster, Texas Roadhouse. It is going to be absolutely madness. We're going to listen to Iran with Sam. Okay. So we will listen to Iran, but we're going to get through all the earnings and it's just going to be a wild, wild end to the week. And then after the market close, I'll be heading on a flight to Chicago to see everybody there for the meetup. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I'll see you guys on the market close. We'll have a lot of earnings. We'll have Sam on. We'll listen to Iran, and we'll get to all these numbers again. Shout out to Stock Talk. His link right there on X. You can follow him there. And we'll probably have him on in a few weeks as well as we bring back Equity Edge, hopefully next week. Thank you, everybody. Appreciate it. I will see you guys tonight. Got like 35 companies reporting today. I'll see you guys after the bell. Bye, everybody.